Okay, so if you're joining us here for our podcasty commentary version of this, you should be looking at the 20th Century Fox, I almost said 21st, 20th Century Fox logo. And it's ending and the chord is struck, which is, I believe, the only time in movie history that they have sustained the note at the end of the 20th Century Fox logo. And already you know that something is very different because of the disgusting yellow color at the top of the frame.
It's like a light leak.
Yeah, exactly.
In space.
A light leak in space where it's a vacuum, but there's still a gross light leak. And that color will return to haunt the film very shortly once they crash land. Alien³ as everyone called it.
I don't understand why. They had to know that people were going to call it Alien³.
I get the impression that nothing got, like, everything got workshopped to death and nothing got solved. I feel like every single thing was a camel decision. You know what I mean? Like, everything was, let's get 98 people in this room and talk about it and make sure that nothing makes sense by the time we leave.
It almost feels like when they were making Alien 3, they assumed that, 1 and 2 did just fine.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So
they had, that's what everybody talks about that. They didn't have a script, they had a release date. They were like, this has to come out in 91.
Does it?
Yeah.
Why don't we wait and add to what is rapidly becoming one of the coolest film franchises of all time, rather than make what people most commonly consider the worst entry.
Yeah, which is like crazy insulting. Like it is for better or worse when it came off the rails, so to speak. I guess we should probably introduce ourselves. I am Scout Tafoya. I write for RogerEbert.com. I am the author of the Unloved series, and I edit Apocalypse Now. I have also been in film comment. With me is Tucker Fox Johnson.
I don't have anywhere near as many credentials as Scout does, but I do really, really love this movie, so I feel like...
He's also the foremost David Fincher expert of anybody that I know, and I feel like there is nobody else that you should turn to in discussion of Alien 3, because I think at this point it really takes some apologists to stand up for this film, and that is sort of my whole thing, is apologizing for movies that people hate. So word there about Alex Thompson's cinematography credit is that it was initially Jordan Cronenweth who was too ill to finish the film, so Alex Thompson took over. They sent Cronenweth home, and now Fincher basically exclusively works with his son Jeff.
He does. They're a pair to work.
Yeah,
with.
they have made some of the most striking and beautiful films of the last decade together. For a while, not unlike Ridley Scott, Fincher tried out just about every director of photography he could find. I think David Fincher, like Darren Aronofsky and many other directors of that generation, all owe Ridley a debt of gratitude. I think that, like, Chris Nolan certainly is another guy. Filmmakers who sort of rose to prominence in the 90s and early 2000s, they probably respect Ridley Scott's craft way more than most critics, I think, because he got visuals right. He did them perfectly. Say what you will about Legend's story, or for that matter, the Tom Cruise performance, which, along with Keanu Reeves in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, is probably one of the most derailing bits of acting in modern cinema. That film is beautiful. Blade Runner is beautiful. Alien is just stunning. And I think that these sequences here, the stuff that mostly got cut out, of course, are where Fincher shows his debt to Ridley Scott more than any place else. These very long, languorous, kind of beautiful shots that don't really fulfill narrative purpose because, Alien, in creating its atmosphere, is what sort of ensured that it was more than just a movie where a monster roams around a spaceship. this movie does, in the assemble cut, which is obviously what we're watching, it has an incredible sense of place and a very, very assured design.
Which is incredible considering it's David Fincher's first film. They handed him the third movie in one of the most, at least critically acclaimed series of all time.
Not to mention, like, box office draw. I mean, those movies were huge. The only reason this movie got made is because the receipts.
And to hand it to a rookie, for lack of a better word, just, oh, this guy's never done this before. Sure, let's give it to him.
Yeah, he'll take studio notes just fine.
It's amazing because even from the get-go, I mean, obviously, there is so much Fincher in these shots.
Yes.
Like, they're dark, they're moody, everything is disgusting. She's covered in oil and maggots, and it's so graphic, but at the same time, it makes me... I think the opening shots of the assembly cut, the one we're watching, make me more sad than any other movie in history because they make me wish that he only made science fiction films.
Yep.
Because his, he is absolutely a filmmaker that has, a unmatched attention to detail, whether it comes to production design or anything else. I mean, you look at movies like Seven and...
Well, and that's another very interesting thing, is that this is the start of one phase of Fincher's career that I think probably around the time of, I want to say maybe Panic Room, he sort of gave up this kind of very grungy, grimy visual style for examining, what... who was it that said it? I think it was Craig Keller or somebody like that said that his obsession with the house at the end of North by Northwest is like sort of what took over. So he started examining these very pristine and spotless environments. But, the Fincher of the 90s was somebody obsessed with filth and grotesquerie. And you can see it in like every single decision. That's what kills me, is that people who talk about how bad this movie is rarely, if ever, recognize just how much attention he paid to literally every detail. You look at the fact that everyone's head was shaved, which you could, sort of chalk up to the earlier draft in which these guys were supposed to be monks, which they sort of kind of remain. But in another way, it's a way to show the knobbly, disgusting head shapes of all these men. Like, you're seeing this guy's head, Superintendent Aaron, I think it's Ralph Brown was his name, looking into the computer, and all you see is his disgusting big head. And he chose actors with very interesting and not at all conventionally, like, pleasing faces. Sigourney Weaver is an oasis of beauty in this place. Ordinarily she's one of many very, very appealing, attractive, imposing people, and, but this is not at all a conventional blockbuster in that it very purposely is full of grotesques.
This is actually the first time, I think, at least my own take in Alien films, where I'm actually really worried about Sigourney Weaver, or rather Ellen Ripley. Like, I can get through Alien and Aliens and kind of just be like, well, this chick's at some point going to pick up a flamethrower, so everything's going to be fine. But this movie, even from the get-go, where they just murder Newt in her sleep and just toss this woman onto this very, very odd planet.
Yep.
Like, it's a terrifying place to be. And so I don't even know how long it takes for the xenomorph to actually show up. Come on. What?
Yeah.
What?
For those wondering if you're not entirely lined up, it's the shot of the planet, the matte painting with the processed in debris flying through the air, and of course the shot of the planet, the sun going down, and everything's dark and disgusting.
Which is
somebody wrote, I can't remember where in the world I saw this for the first time, but essentially somebody pointed out that this is one of the first blockbusters with the most fatalist, like, existential attitude towards everything, where essentially every major plot development in this film is greeted with a gigantic shrug from everybody. Sigourney Weaver does more sighing in this film than, like, an entire season of Skins. She is defeated. She is absolutely without reason to live and reason to hope. And so she's just surrounded by chattering fools, just scared zealots. So nobody can help her. Nobody's particularly interested in helping her. In fact, many of them are actively trying to harm her. And all she can do is just shrug. But
I just looking at all these frames coming back and forth.
Oh yeah,
is
the shots in this room in particular are like a masterclass in what somebody who is a huge cinephile does the first time they give him a set. Everything is low angles except that weird shot of the back of Pete Postlethwaite's head here, but you're looking up at everybody. It's this very imposing religious, scene setting, and you've got all these bald heads, like, which is another insane decision. You're making a movie where, again, like you're saying, the third film in one of the most lucrative series of all time, all of the supporting characters, with the exception of Charles Dutton, look exactly the same. How are you supposed to, it took me so long. It took me 15 viewings before I could really parse out who was who. This film has obsessed me for something like a decade, I want to say. I remember the first time I saw it, I watched the end of it on TV and was very intrigued by how weird it was, so I rented it on VHS, watched it, did not understand it, and it just kind of stayed in my brain for years and years and years. So finally, when I got the assemble cut and realized just how beautiful and strange this film was, I watched this more than probably anything. I'd say this and Apocalypse Now, the Redux, are the films I've probably watched more than anything in the world. So now, anytime the camera cuts to somebody, I can tell you whether or not they're a character with a name, or if they're an extra who got unfortunately short shrift. Because there are probably a dozen name actors in this film who actually sort of get, whether it's lines or an arc or something like that. And everybody else who's hanging out in the fringes of these shots here, they all die in the same scene, basically. And then it's just back to, who you had beforehand. So you have all these fantastic character actors all throughout here, and they get one line, two lines. I mean, Paul McGann, a great actor, he talked about how from scene to scene, his accent would change because David Fincher would get script pages and he'd be like, oh boy, that doesn't really fit what we did before. Can you maybe lose the weird accent you were doing? And just an insanely hostile work environment. And it's shocking that the film is as coherent as it is, given that. But of course, it's not all that shocking because it's David Fincher, who is the most meticulous man in Hollywood.
Even if he's making a film off of a script that's on fire, he's going to somehow manage to put it all together.
Exactly.
Well, I was watching this makes me think about if they had made, if Alien the series had been approached with a more modern Hollywood sensibility, like if the Alien, if Alien came out in 2005,
right,
and they were just. It made a ton of money, and they decided we need to make these movies as fast as we can just because it's what's hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're making Marvel movies. We have to get them out as quick as possible.
Right.
We need to create an entire universe very rapidly so that people keep buying shit for them and keep seeing these movies, and they're making billions of dollars anytime they come out. And what makes me love this film so much is that it's almost as if, a huge studio system had made Alien and Aliens, and, both of them had been tremendously successful, and everyone went to saw them, and everybody loved them. And then it's almost like somebody got to Alien 3 before the studio could. Like, even though the studio obviously made it and, frankly, turned it into... Any problem I have with this movie probably comes from the studio.
Well, no, absolutely.
Anybody else, but it cracks me up to think about, the idea of, Captain America 3.
Right.
And the movie opens, and the first shot is somebody shoots Scarlett Johansson in the face.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah. That is the equivalent of Alien 3 to this series. Is they took, a slasher film in space. An action film in space.
A Vietnam movie.
In space.
As they talk about, it's basically just a Vietnam script that they retooled to be about Ellen Ripley in space.
And then they decided, all right, we got to make a third one. What do we do? And the idea of a studio system or a studio looking at this movie and being, all right, how do we make Alien 3? What's new? What do we do different? and then just like there's one guy in the back of the conference room just writing down all the ideas he has. Well, how do we fucking kill everybody? he just his wife just divorced him or something, and he's just at the end of his rope. This movie is at the end of its rope from start to finish.
It is absolutely the portrayal of somebody on just a hair's breadth from giving up. She starts with very little reason to live, and then loses that, and then keeps going. No, and that's, I mean, from the production meeting accounts that I've, listened to, and I've read just about everything there is to read about this film. Apparently, in meetings, they're talking about the direction that the series should take and all this stuff, and Sigourney Weaver turns to Fincher, who at this point, I mean, he's in his 20s, I believe. He's probably just wearing like a loose-fitting t-shirt, maybe like a flannel over top of that. He's got short, kind of messy hair, and he's wearing sneakers. That's sort of the picture I have in this meeting. She turns to him and she says, "How do you picture Ripley?" And he thinks about it for a second and goes, "I don't know, bald." And I'm sure that he had thought about it, obviously, because from a production design standpoint, as David Cairns pointed out, and as that I later reported in the Love thing, there's a Joan of Arc sort of motif going on throughout this. There's a lot of the passion of Joan of Arc, and David Cairns, I think, was the first person to sort of find that and stand up for it. But you do get the impression that it was essentially, 6 bankers with nothing better to do than to meddle in this production that they had all this money at stake in. And then, the guy with the skateboard in the back of the classroom just arguing about the best direction for this juggernaut to go in. And you've got here, again, this is something that I feel like only he would have done. She's got the one bloodshot eye that she keeps until...
Even though we were just talking about how one of the coolest things about Alien is that for most of the movie, unless you were living under a rock, you have no idea who the main character is.
Right.
And even though, Alien 3 is a lot more, all right, this movie is going to be about this woman, whether you like it or not, they are doing nothing to make her easier to look at.
No.
Which, I mean, Sigourney Weaver is gorgeous.
Yeah,
but,
you would have to do a lot worse than give her, a disgusting eye to make her not attractive.
But they're kicking her ass.
Yeah, they are.
And it's so amazing that he, I recently watched, there's a really wonderful YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting, and the guy that does it, he recently actually did one on David Fincher, and he talks about how over the course of his career, even from his very first movie, he's shooting with the most objective camera in modern cinema, where he never uses hand cam. Even when the camera moves, it's still very stable and never shakes. And he's always looking at all of his characters. Even now, where, Ellen is touching Newt more to believe that she's actually dead.
Right.
And the camera's still just kind of sitting there and letting it happen. It's not trembling. It's not doing anything. And it probably turned people off at the time, but there's a clinical aspect to this, very much so, that she's essentially performing an operation. What is this kind of masquerade that she goes there to sort of, look at the body and have this moment of closure, turns into an operation. It turns into this incredibly invasive, very unsentimental, autopsy sequence. I mean, the autopsy sequence that follows when Charles Dance grabs the saw and just starts cutting this beloved character open. 10-year-old girl.
It couldn't be any more a statement of purpose that the man behind the camera does not care about your feelings, does not really care what you think about him by the time it's over. I remember my dad telling me, because he had seen this in an interview, and I think it ran in Empire or something like that at the time of the release, where Fincher, at very much the end of his rope, said, "I made this movie for my friends." And that really, really bothered people. The idea that he took this thing and made it about his own desires, which of course means that he was sort of following his own muse rather than trying to make a movie that the fans of the first two movies could enjoy. And I just remember hearing that so much growing up. I made this for my friend, and that's why it's so depressing and dark and unyielding. It's pretty much a never-ending onslaught of depressing, like, you know, she's settling all throughout this movie. She's settling, and she sort of gets the impression that at this point in her life, absolutely nothing is going to give her back what she lost. You know, she was just a worker on a commercial mining ship. You know what I mean? Back on Earth, you'd have been gone for a few months, then you've gone home. But now that she's in space, all it took was a wrong turn, and now that's it. Everything that she knew is over. So you've taken somebody who was a fairly ordinary person, and you've made them, you know, a completely unwilling and reluctant hero. And Sigourney Weaver manages to keep the characterization of Ellen Ripley consistent through 3 wildly different movies.
That's one of the coolest things about the Alien series, is that every film is a completely different genre.
Yeah.
And is approached in a completely different way. But it's funny because I never even, you know, when I was first shown the Alien films by a person who loved them, a friend of mine, he was showing me all of them, and we were watching through them, and, you know, I was enjoying them and, you know, laughing at them when, mainly Aliens, just like the Bill Paxton stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And everything else. Yeah, but I was still really enjoying the movies, and I loved how very different they were, and how the approach was totally different, and I really wished that kind of thing were more common in, you know, bigger Hollywood franchises where they actually let different directors make them and try different things, because why not? You know,
exactly.
It's cool to actually, rather than just have the story be a continuation, actually try something new. But I remember getting to Alien 3, and he even warned me going into Alien 3. He's like, listen, this one's kind of different. You just, it's good, but you kind of got to bear with it. And I remember sitting there through the whole movie. I don't think I said anything. We just sat really quietly in his basement watching it for 2.5 hours. And he showed me the work print. The work print was the first one I saw.
Yeah, there you go.
And we finished it. And he was like, what do you think? And I was like, oh, that was the first one that actually made me feel anything.
Yeah.
Like, because, you know, even though I adore the first 2 Alien films, this one, Alien 3, is the first one that actually, and I would honestly make this argument for a lot of David Fincher's movies, even though on paper they might sound silly, is that they're all very human movies. Like, he actually does take the time to approach even the most wild sort of situations. You know, Gone Girl is pretty off the wall, and, and you know, even something like Fight Club, which is insanity,
or Benjamin Button, which is founded on utter nonsense.
They're still addressing very, very real,
well, that was, you know,
human emotion and human things. So it's like, this is the first movie in the franchise, in the Alien franchise, where it's like, oh, but now I actually know why I need to care about Ellen Ripley, not just like, I'm watching her, you know, try desperately to convince people of something, or light some aliens on fire.
Exactly.
Like, no, I'm now actually watching a woman who basically has taken on the role of a woman who's had a miscarriage or watched her own child die.
Exactly. Well, that's Matt Zoller's sites basically said to me that the reason Alien 3 is so perfect and so kind of wonderfully of its time, and evidence that, you know, we were sort of progressing, is that it's a movie about a woman who desperately wants an abortion. And though nobody quite thinks of it on that terms, it's true. Like, she doesn't want the thing that's inside of her. And all these guys, all of these kind of giant, imposing men are just going to make it difficult. Here we go, chickens in cages. That's more proof of the ecosystem here, that they clearly have to eat these things to survive.
God, the production design in this movie is
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Like, even all the like all the rails on the ceiling
Yep.
for the chains to move, or the, like
all the fucking blood on the
all
walls
this
because
stuff.
of the yeah, the
like
but
this
like
place looks so lived in
and just the
occupied. Like it's rare to find a movie that actually really feels completely believable like this, especially a science fiction movie.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, even some of the great ones of the last, 10, 20 years, they don't have this attention to detail because they don't need to have it. You know.
I look at this, like you were saying right when we started this, is, this I actually completely think that Fincher owes to Ridley Scott and the team that worked on Alien and even Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Where Blade Runner was like one of the first futuristic movies where everything was disgusting.
Yep. look at the design here on the tiles and the wall. There's this kind of Art Deco thing going on. This kind of, very late 20s, early 30s design to all this stuff. And it's just an aside, It has nothing to do with the overall aesthetic of the film, but clearly somebody watched Blade Runner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we were even, we watched a few sequences from the first Alien movie before putting this on, and we were, the comment that I'm remembering is, look at the coffee cups, where the camera is panning before you even meet any of the cast through the empty ship, and they're just showing you all of these super tiny details that don't matter
at all
to the premise of the movie, but they're selling you on it. They're making you believe that this is a ship that people live on and have to survive on, or have to do work on, or whatever. And it's
and as you pan through here again, it's the same thing. They had so much more work to do because the spaceship is contained. This is a gigantic lead foundry.
The set of Alien 3 is nothing
ludicrous,
if not incredibly ambitious.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm sure that a lot of these environments were sort of, repurposed or what have you, that they used the same room several times. I'm sure for budget constraints, because so much of the set was built believing that another movie was going to happen, and then they fired Vincent Ward, whose idea it was to look at the very odd designs of the window up there.
It's like walking into. It's like when Harrison Ford goes to the apartment building.
There you go. Yeah.
In Blade Runner to meet Daryl Hannah, it's like they tried to make it pretty one time, and now it doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly. That there is so much there is history sort of in the walls and in the windows and on the sweat on everyone's face. Now here we have some very expressive double exposure going on here, which I'm willing to bet came from watching Peter Lorre movies. I remember, I think it was Paul McGann saying that while they were making this, he would constantly be setting up shots, David Fincher, and just be saying, something to the effect of, and here comes John Ford and stuff like that, where he would be constantly talking aloud about the people that he was stealing from as he was making it. And there is so much history in this film, and it's so easy to ignore if you don't want to look for it. But this is, to me, one of the most impressive debuts ever. It's just got such clarity. Like, that shot right there of the hacksaws and meat cleavers on the wall is more beautiful than anything in so many debuts.
It makes me wonder if Alien 3 came out and if all they did was change the xenomorph into a different
if they maybe
creature.
Didn't try to do that sort of woeful puppet projection process.
I guess,
which is, I'm guessing, is a sticking point.
Hang up for me in Alien 3, it's the fact that they tried to do a digital alien, especially because...
Well, again, very important. There's only one digital shot in the whole film, and it's when the water makes its head crack open towards the end. The rest of this is a very strange process where they took a puppet and filmed it separately, and then tried to place it onto the... Because they, again...
Oh, it's not superimposed.
Well, yeah, exactly, because they didn't have the money for computer animation, because at the time it was, crazy costly and ambitious.
That alone is even extremely extremely telling of David Fincher, who throughout his career has always been trying to kind of push forward.
Exactly. You
with
look
that
at
kind of thing.
The shots in Panic Room that go through the walls
Right,
and the
through
coffee
the
mugs
ceiling, and you're
that.
watching dust come off while
Yes.
they're hammering at the gas line and stuff. Like it's.
This
Yeah,
is, by the way,
'cause-
one of the best creatures in the series.
Well,
the puppet,
and that's
when
what's
you
so
see
frustrating is when they do the puppet, it actually looks amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and
Tom Woodruff Jr. the Stan Winston creature shop, I believe is responsible for the monster itself when you see it in close up, and like Tom Woodruff acting as the monster is very, very expressive and interesting. And the suit is the best one in the series. Like I don't care what anyone says. Like,
well, especially because it's that like flesh color now.
Yeah.
It's not black.
it's
so
like orange.
a lot more unsettling to look
Exactly.
at, and it's funny because it you know, whatever it actually ends up meaning, if it means anything, but you know, now that everyone is bald, including the alien, and they're all kind of the same
right.
color,
Yep.
and everyone's lit through the whole movie by, you know, the molten metal and stuff, so everyone's kind of orange, and I love this where we come back to Ellen Ripley, who has shaved her head for some reason.
Well,
But-
no, it's the lice. They tell her to shave her head for the lice.
And they don't at any point show her shaving her head.
No,
Like,
it's just happened.
It's not important.
No, you're right.
They skip right over it. It doesn't matter. It's all right. Well, now her head's shaved. It's like you said before. Everything is addressed with a shrug.
Yep.
It's like, yep. Well, now her head's shaved.
Now
so.
deal with this. Yeah.
So now she's gonna look like everybody else here.
I love. Well, first of all, his camera work here is so beautiful, and I wonder if the slow pans across objects were an Alex Thompson thing or a Jordan Cronenweth thing, but it's just like such perfect precision in taking you from one thing to another. That shot is so wonderful because you start with Charles Dance looking out through the door to make sure nobody gets in to spy on her showering or trying to take advantage of her, which of course happens a few scenes later. And then you come across her and she's got this very languorous kind of like, you know, this movement where you can sense both incredible pain but also incredible relief, where she believes that the nightmare is over. You know, she doesn't know what's in store for her, but her body language suggests this kind of catharsis, which is like so heartbreaking when you realize that of course it's not over because it's
You're in a
really,
movie.
yeah,
You're in a
exactly.
movie called Alien
Yeah.
3.
So here's Paul McGann introducing himself there as Golic, the lunatic with weird teeth.
There's just so many. I don't know. Alien 3 confounds me on so many levels because to me, it's the first epic Alien movie. I don't know if anyone else would ever agree with that, but I feel like it's the first one that actually attacks you. With,
I think maybe a better way to describe it is that it's the first art house Alien film because
that's absolutely true.
like as beautiful as the first one is, it's more. It's like I don't know. The first Alien is almost like Blue Collar, the Paul Schrader film in space. You know, it's the concerns of the working class. It does not. The production design, the art direction, the cinematography, the creature design, the beautiful H.R. Giger and Mobius, artwork. That's all everywhere, but it's informing a very small narrative. This just gesticulates in a billion directions, none of which it can quite do service to, of course, because the screenplay was so nuts. But this one is very much a super weird. I mean, it is so much more in keeping with the the sci-fi of somebody like Pyotr Zulkin, who is this mad genius who made these insane sci-fi films in the 80s. It's very European in its bleakness and in its very peculiar design. There are elements of, in the graffiti and everything on the backs of the wall and the kind of grotesqueness. It sort of calls to mind Wong Kar-wai, I think, a lot of Hong Kong cinema, Ringo Lam to a lesser extent, some John Woo, this kind of purposeful ugliness and this very busy production design, which I assume probably came out of a lot of early anime. But there's so much going on here. Alien is sort of a perfect machine, so you don't really need any of the details that it supplies to you because there's nothing wrong with it. Why would you look elsewhere when the narrative is so great? Whereas this is so peculiar that you can't help but look around at the walls and the tattoos. Over there, that's Holt McElhenney's Jr. with the the teardrop tattoo, who
He shows up in Fight Club a little bit.
Yeah, I believe he
Small.
does. Yeah, Fincher is peculiar that he didn't really start working with people on repeat until way later in his career. Because I feel like this probably made him realize that absolutely everybody's disposable. Like, working here, I don't know that he wanted to carry any of these guys with him because of the bad memories of the shoot.
Well, it makes me think about, especially if, he was working on a script that wasn't finished and they were constantly changing it and handing him new pages and new sides and
right.
demanding that he alter things.
And then showing up on set and undermining him. I remember very distinctly David Giler showing up and saying, why are you going to listen to him as a shoe salesman?
Right.
Like, which is awesome. Like, what director doesn't want to hear that in the middle of directing their actors?
Especially their first movie.
I know.
Where you don't even have like a track record or any confidence.
No, all you've done is make music videos.
Yeah, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Let me just work. Like I'm gonna make you a good film. Let me do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, which is another reason why I actually really, really love David Fincher is because he has found a way to get his way despite working within a studio system, which is something that's incredibly hard to do.
And he's known that from the start. I think this probably gave him a lifetime of armor against producers. And so when he senses that they're not going to give him total creative control, as in the case of his recently scuttled 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea adaptation, he's just said, fuck it, and moved on.
Right.
Because it's not worth it to dig in and fight these people tooth and nail for every single creative decision, because at worst, this is what happens. You get a movie that the vast majority of the people who see it don't respect and don't see you in it and don't pay attention to the work you did.
And ultimately, what's the point if you can't convey those things?
Exactly.
Because some other guy or girl is telling you, well, don't do it that way. Even though you're the one who has the vision, you're the one who has the talent. Don't do it that way because it's going to cost too much money or whatever.
I can't even imagine how frustrating when you get to that budget level it must be to have people saying, we need this. We need you to do 20% more of this.
Right.
We need these people to be cast. It's like, oh, good Lord, when does it end?
And I think that is, again, one of the things that makes me love Alien 3 so much is because despite all of the hands-on studio activity, all the changes, all the undermining, he still managed to churn out one of the darkest and moodiest movies I think I've ever seen.
One of the most singularly... I mean, it is so strange and so unique. There is nothing else like this in American cinema. I mean, I truly believe that. Even in the 70s when everything was dark, when children's movies looked like The Black Hole, there was nothing like this, which is so Sartre influence, so totally bleak and hopeless.
It just, I don't know, it's something makes me feel like, and which is kind of funny in itself that a studio would get so involved in the Alien film franchise.
Right.
Like, obviously, yeah, if it's making money, they're going to want to fight to try to keep it making
Can
money.
we talk about this shot and how wonderful it is?
It's everything about it, the goggles, the lighting,
the lighting from the fan. Oh,
the
God,
actual skin. Like
his face is so dirty and pockmarked.
Well,
and
so
wonderful.
is the skin. And when they find, I don't know, in either of the first two Alien movies, anytime they find skin, it's very clean.
Yeah,
it's just sort of there, and
true.
it's unsettling because you know what's coming.
Yeah,
but you're like, all right, well that's it. And even this shot where you're just looking at this.
God, it's so beautiful.
Disgusting, absolutely terrifying thing.
Yeah,
and you're not, you know what it is.
But they don't. And that's the
don't.
other thing I think that a lot of people probably after two films had a hard time believing, that there would need to be so much setup. This movie is so patient. It's so slow.
But that's what I mean.
And I love that.
Where I feel like if this movie came out did not have the Alien 3 title on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing
It's
to
a,
suggest.
yeah, you're right.
It
If they changed the creature design,
if it was not an Alien movie, in quotes,
yeah,
this
would be so much more fun.
And they just decided to be like, all right, you know what? We're gonna make. Hey, we liked Alien, so we're gonna try to make something else.
If they had called this Galaxy of Terror 2,
right? Who gives a shit with the title? Like,
exactly.
We're gonna call it whatever we want, and we're gonna redesign the creature a little bit off the Geiger stuff,
right?
And make an original creature. And you're looking at Sigourney Weaver, but I mean, at this point, you're just looking at somebody who's typecast.
Yes, exactly.
You're dealing with a completely competently made,
more than competently,
alien,
like
film.
Fucking beautifully made. I mean, even so these conversations again, this kind of like, you know, and this is kind of hilarious that these conversations have so much space between them. There's so much sighing and breathing, and to me, like, I love this, but naturally, I think Fincher has gone so far away from this model. I mean, compare these conversations that Sigourney Weaver and Charles Dance have to Rooney Mara and Jesse Eisenberg at the beginning of The Social
God,
Network.
there's 10 pages of dialogue delivered in a minute. They are on fire.
Exactly, and I feel like maybe some of that is still his kind of railing against his parents, so to speak.
Well, I even noticed that in Dragon Tattoo.
Dragon Tattoo,
especially, and it cracked me up because I remember going into Dragon Tattoo being like, all right, this movie is actually up against it, because by the point where Dragon Tattoo was finally made, it was already a worldwide phenomenon.
Well, yeah,
Americans had all read the books, and a lot of Americans, despite typical American movie behavior, had actually watched
all three of them,
all of the foreign versions. So they had taken the time, they had dealt with the subtitles, they had watched the movie, so they knew the plot. So then that's when...
Yeah, the American movie had very little to gain.
Right.
And yet, it's better than all three of them.
It is. It's because, I mean, you know, obviously you've got David Fincher helming it, so he's going to take the time. You can clearly tell he loves Lisbeth Salander. You know, he's making a movie about this character. Mm-hmm. You know, Daniel Craig's there and doing a great job, but Finch doesn't care. No. He's making a movie about this damaged, very complex woman.
Yes. And that's where his sort of production design really comes alive. Right. The stuff with Daniel Craig does not nearly have the attention to framing and to the grotesque details. I mean, he puts more into the apartment that Daniel Craig comes and finds Rooney Mara in than he does to any of the environment that Daniel Craig himself occupies.
Right. It's not important to him.
No, not at all.
And
again, so that's very important that Lisbeth Salander is essentially kind of teenage cyberpunk Ellen Ripley in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
So Alien 3 haunts his career in a lot of very important ways. No matter what.
Well, the reason I even brought up Dragon Tattoo is because, like Social Network, and it's definitely something it was a lesson he learned and carried through, is he had to get through the plot.
Right.
And, you know, because he knew most of the audience probably already knew it.
Right.
And so if you go back and look at Dragon Tattoo, Fincher's Dragon Tattoo,
right,
the backstory is delivered so quickly. Like, so much of the dialogue is
it's that whole Christopher Plummer monologue. He's just like...
through. It's the fastest thing in the world.
Absolutely, because he doesn't care.
Right, because you know what? This doesn't actually matter. I'm assuming you all know what I'm talking about.
You've all seen the movie already, right? You've all read the book. Who cares?
And he's like, but that's not even why I'm making this.
No, he's doing it as an exercise. And that's like, yeah, absolutely. Here, I'm gonna detour briefly to talk about Vincenzo Nicolai in the background of this scene plays the guy who I assume is like the prison janitor. And he's got some very peculiar... Jude, they call him. Vincenzo Nicolai is like a beautifully hideous person. You can see him for a minute in The Dark Knight. But there's a running joke throughout this whole thing, which again speaks to the kind of Fincherian detail here, is that after everyone is murdered, Jude shows up with a mop and a bucket to clean up their guts.
One of the most morbid comedic directors out there.
It's such perfect black humor, because literally every time there's a murder, he just shows up to mop up the blood, which is so perfect because of course you would. You're in a prison planet, 1 billion miles from home.
We have to keep it clean.
Exactly, and it's so perfect because that's like, and it's such a great like little studio comment moment where it's like, the world is falling apart, and you guys are worried about what viewers in Idaho are gonna think about this movie. You know what I mean? It's like, Harvey Weinstein's thing about the reason that he was going to re-edit Snowpiercer was so that people in Oklahoma would understand it. And it's like, dude, no, you're wrong. And who cares?
Right, they're not even going to bother going to see it. And if they do...
They would more appreciate a movie that actually has a through line.
Right.
It's like, it's crazy.
I was thinking about the fact that I don't think that Alien 1 is an unattractive film. Quite the opposite, actually. Mm-hmm. Especially, not to sell something, but if you want to see a beautiful restoration, watch it on Blu-ray. Because it looks unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I feel like the entire Ridley Scott canon was sort of designed
That's absolutely
for
true.
Blu-ray.
They shot his movies, and I think whether it was his doing or just the fact that the movies were successful, they were kept. Mm-hmm. So they were easily restored. They weren't having to do obscene amounts of restoration on his movies because they were forgotten.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you can so tell watching this. First of all, the sound got compromised in the scenes that vanished because they add this steam effect whenever there's dialogue that got cut in the first one. When Charles Dance first shows up with Ripley in the whatever that weird sauna is, he says, there's an EEV down by the beach. There's this to obscure his dialogue because clearly they lost the elements.
Right. They couldn't process it properly.
Exactly.
Whatever. But what makes me love this movie so much more is, and I guess it kind of goes along with what you're saying about this being kind of the first art house alien film, is like look at that! Look at that! They bothered to use a tenth of the screen for an image, and it's so striking and powerful, and it's just a couple of guys walking through a door. Like, it's not even like an important moment in the movie.
No, it's not at all. But of course, like, that's what matters to him, is that this stuff, which may or may not serve a narrative function, should be something that you walk away, that you remember. And the thing about the three men in the basement now going to do their job, and this is kind of like also perfectly Fincher, they never explain what they're doing down there. I have no clue why they're in the basement to go down there to get killed.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
It's a
matter.
horror movie, sort of.
It's the same reason. It's the same thing as a guy, as two teenagers going into the cabin in the woods to have sex. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It looks gross and slightly blue collarish, and that's the important thing.
I was thinking about Alien and how Alien is this very dirty. Well, not even dirty.
No, it definitely is. I mean, the whole part of the movie where Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton live, two of the most perfectly grimy character actors of the 1970s. Of course, you're going to throw them in the grossest part of the ship. And I remember so many people, like somebody saying that every shitty sci-fi filmmaker must have looked at that and gone, "Oh, god damn it, that's how you do it."
Yeah, this everything's like there's steam, and everything's really dark, and everything, and that's, I think, I mean, as much as Cameron had to kind of piggyback it when doing Aliens,
right? Yeah.
But Aliens almost feels like you're watching it through tracing paper. You're watching a movie where everything seems kind of fuzzy, and for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't kept up as well, or they're adding all of those kind of weird, very James Cameron lightning effects and like all these weird things that he did to make it his own movie, but at the same time, it doesn't look quite as pretty as Alien did.
I think that James Cameron has always been the blue-collar cyberpunk dude.
Yeah.
I think that James Cameron's sort of his fondness for the working class is what's carried through all of his films. It's the reason that even in Avatar, which doesn't have an honest moment, there's this stuff where you creep up on Giovanni Ribisi and he's whatever, Stephen Lang's scene where he's drinking coffee and all that stuff, or that's what it is, Giovanni Ribisi golfing. Right. There's an ordinariness to all of the action in James Cameron film. I mean, most heavily in The Abyss, which is just about oilers. You know what I mean? It's kind of hilarious to think that he went from making he went from continuing a series which was a bunch of miners getting waylaid and sort of called to do something extraordinary, to then making a movie about oilers who discover alien life beneath the ocean. It's the same movie. It's
Pretty
just
much.
one of them's got a happy ending.
But what cracks me up is, you come to Alien 3, which, even though it has some of the darkest compositions in the Alien series, it also has some of the brightest. Like, this last few minutes we've been watching this movie, so many of the sequences are so bright. Like, even now, this is so much brighter than anything in Alien or Aliens.
Yes.
Except maybe when they're sitting in, like the cafeteria of the ship, of the Nostromo, like where everything is just white walls and lighting anyway.
Yeah.
There's so much lighting in it, which is funny because that's also very David Fincher. He loves creating a mood with dim or dark lighting.
I love look in the back here.
Right.
These Chinese letters. I assume they're Chinese. I apologize if they're actually Japanese. They're everywhere throughout the production design.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right. The brightness here, where you can see the very perfect detail on the bag rippling in the wind there. I think what he likes is, when he likes the odd moment of contrast. You think about the scene where Michael Douglas wakes up in the desert in the game, and everything's very bright, for the first time in the whole film. Because it sort of gives you an appreciation for the changes that people go through. The whole point of the game is to take somebody out of their brightly lit corporate world and plunge them into the worst depths of their own, psyche. Which, of course, means taking them to the darkest places in the city, whatever fake city that takes place in.
But even, to step aside from cinematography for a second, we're about to watch Ellen Ripley get raped.
Yes.
Which I don't think is ever something I even considered in the first two Alien movies. Like,
well, no, if she's in danger, it's either okay. This is the thing too, is that Fincher recognizes that just as big a threat to her as the creature itself
is all of the men she is now trapped with,
right,
on this prison planet.
Which is another way of saying that this is the first Alien film to treat her like a woman,
right,
as opposed to just one of the guys, an alien, and then a mother.
Which is ironic considering she looks like everybody else.
Well, that's what's so great, is they sort of desexualize her, but even here, in, the last prison in space, that counts for something. Like, let me take a second here to talk about how much I love these costumes that they've got them in. I love, I think it's Rains is this fella's name, the character anyway, with his weird dog ear hat. I love that.
Well, I love, the whole visual style of this movie, I said it earlier, makes me want for another David Fincher science fiction film.
Exactly, which is why the 20,000 Leagues is such a heartbreaking thing, because good lord, can you imagine? It would have been this.
It would be.
Because it would be a submarine, it would be dank and disgusting.
It would be windows, it would be all these guys who were very dirty and wearing clothes that they needed because of the job they were doing, and not because it was fashionable or because it looked good on camera. And, luckily enough, all of these things do look good on camera. But it's insanity to think that somebody who, you can watch a film like this and go, this is something that is so inside of this filmmaker's wheelhouse. And he might never do it again.
Exactly.
Because either he's afraid to do it again because he's been spurned.
Right.
Or just no one's going to let him do it.
Well, and the very interesting thing is that though he has never returned to outright sci-fi, there has been a sense of a bendable reality in just about everything that he's done, with the exception, I guess, of Zodiac. You look at Gone Girl. Gone Girl is ludicrous in so many ways. Benjamin Button, again, that's a sci-fi premise, but it's couched in Americana and this kind of, New Orleans-y, folksy nostalgia, so it doesn't seem like sci-fi.
Right,
it just seems far-fetched. It's like a tall tale.
Right.
Or The Game. The Game is a sci-fi plot, but it's people doing it, so it doesn't seem like sci-fi.
Well, we had this conversation, I think a couple of years ago at this point, where we were talking about how Fincher's success is that he makes the most off-the-wall films in the world, but manages to ground them just enough in reality.
Exactly.
Like even Panic Room.
Yeah.
A movie that is, what many people call one of the most like competently made B movies ever made.
Right.
It's still just it's a film where the plot is kind of ludicrous.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's an insane thing to base a movie around. Like,
right.
And it really took confidence, I think, to pull that off. We're like, what's this movie about? What's about a woman in a room that she happens to have when some people come looking for her stuff?
Also, her daughter is diabetic.
Right.
Like there's
yeah, exactly. It's one
it's all those
contrivance after another, but it all works.
But he somehow manages to make all those things work. I mean, you look at like Seven. Like Seven
is nonsense.
Seven could be any cop movie ever made.
Right.
Seven could be.
Well, I mean, it's basically Dirty Harry, but a buddy cop movie.
It could be, but Dirty Harry. It could be a week of Law and Order. Like it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But because of his attention to detail, because of his production design,
because he cares about the look,
because he cares about the way it looks and feels, Seven emerges as, rather than just being some generic,
it's
I think about, for some reason, my go-to like bullshit cop movie is Untraceable. like that's
oh
like
my god,
it's like two cops versus the internet. But that's what I mean. Like it Seven could have just as easily been Untraceable in somebody else's hands.
Precisely.
But because somebody who was, and it's funny because on the Seven, look at this.
Yeah. No, this by the way, with Leon Herbert had that. They just killed him. He was Boggs. Had a cross tattoo on his head that I love. That's a perfect detail. But that's the best puppet in the series.
That's the best puppet in the series, and it's absolutely terrifying. And it looks so real, and it's just covered in blood. Oh, it's horrifying.
Yeah, we're saying puppet. I guess that Tom Woodruff Jr. is in that suit.
It's a fella in a suit.
It's a gentleman in a suit. But again, that is a tradition that has been around forever. A guy in a suit is the foundation of sci-fi.
Right.
Like, at least as far as American sci-fi. I don't mean to undersell the contribution of Fritz Lang in any sense. But, I mean, there's even something to be made for Hell in Metropolis. That's a lady in a robot suit. And here, again, a guy in a suit, but it works. Because it's filmed right.
It's attention to detail. It's filmed right. The production design on it makes it look real. It makes it look so scary. Like especially,
and the music, of course. Elliot Goldenthal's score, very different from Jerry Goldsmith's for Alien,
but amazing
from James Horner's and Aliens. But yeah, probably I don't know. Jerry Goldsmith did some amazing work in Alien, but this is a very good score. And a lot of why this movie works.
But his attention to detail.
Yes.
And making sure that everything in frame is believable.
Right.
Despite the fact that you're watching a movie about a space alien.
Here we go. And the thing is, okay, so you look at this environment.
That's
here.
the most Fincher shot
ever. Yeah.
Just this.
That's Niall Buggy, who has been in movies for a very long time. He was in Zardos in '74 as one of Sean Connery's madcap guides through the crazy afterlife, and he most recently actually just appeared in Mr. Turner as Mr. Carew, I believe, one of the painters at the opening that he goes to. Anyway, he's fabulous. He doesn't get enough to do here, but then nobody does because there are 400 characters and not enough screen time. And I love this too. If you're going to bring somebody back, make sure they're as gross as possible. You're going to bring back Lance Henriksen, cover him in dirt, and have him leaking weird fluids.
The android blood.
Yeah, the white android blood.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think about. Alien 3 makes me think about Prometheus.
Oh yeah.
It's like if Prometheus came out and no one at any point was like, by the way, this is an alien movie.
Right.
People, I would like to think their response to it would have been
a little better.
Because people's expectations keep being set by the
Alien.
title or by the whatever.
And that's the problem, is that anything made in the shadow of Alien is going to seem inferior because Alien is perfect.
Right. It is a perfect movie. There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And it's funny because, people always talk about, oh, well, I love Aliens, or I love,
Yeah, exactly. I
love the sequel, but it's like, yeah, but the sequel sucks in comparison
at
to least
Alien.
in comparison to Alien,
Yeah.
because it's you are taking a 10 out of 10 and making people have to live up to it.
Exactly, and that's tough, and that's obviously there's nothing you can do to have the audience divorce its expectations. I mean, all you have to do is when you're recommending a movie, you know what I mean? Like Birdman, to pick a recent example, if that comes out and you say it kind of reminded me of The Cradle Will Rock, somebody goes in with those expectations, and whether or not it lives up to that, that's what they're going to be thinking about. Obviously, that's an incredibly strange example, but that's sort of it, is that if you give anyone something to walk into that movie, that is a golf club they can use to beat the thing that they're watching.
It's like a catch-22 of film recommendation.
Exactly.
You want people to see these things because you saw it and you adored it or whatever, and you want to support the film.
Right, you want people to go spend their money on the things that you care about.
You can't just be like, yeah, go see it, it's good. Because no one's going to go see
cares.
it. You have to sell it at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's something else to, especially, I can't even imagine people trying to sell Alien 3.
Oh my god, how would you even do it?
In the early
only
90s.
way it would work is if you were like, like, I can't even imagine, like, you would have to have been somebody who went to every sci-fi film in, like, Warsaw from 1975 to 1985. Where you're like, well, it's kind of got some of, like, Andrei Zulawski's really unsparing view of humanity and femininity, but it's kind of got the madcap humor of Peter Solkin's Golem. Like, there's no way that you could, like, and there's a beautiful shot right there with the gossamer curtains and her kind of perfect head.
She's got a great bald head.
She sure does. Not many people. Okay, so here's another thing worth pointing out. Earlier this very day, the trailer for Terminator Genesis premiered. And in it is Emilia Clarke, who, thanks to an American accent and the production design, just looks and sounds like a teenaged American girl. And what's insane is that Sigourney Weaver, except as a joke in the wonderful Galaxy Quest, has never, that I can think of, sort of over-sexualized herself, because she has been so confident in her physical presence. And I don't think any director has ever looked at her and said, we need to kind of, let's put her in a push-up bra.
Right, no one's ever trying to make her...
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the very, the famous ending of Alien where she's in her underwear, but even that, there's a kind of subdued, it's a catharsis point. You're unwinding.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
It's not charged in the same way that if, anybody else had shot that
And
scene.
it's designed to make you relax,
Precisely,
only to have
precisely.
the most terrifying moment in the
jump
whole
scare
film
of
happen.
the 70s. Yeah, and that's, it's like, Ripley is a heroine that needs to come back. I mean, there is no modern analog. There is no modern comparison to be made in the way that even over several films they have drawn one of the most consistently strong and beguiling and fascinating and empowered women, I mean, in the entire sci-fi genre. You think about the fact that until the 70s, if you made a movie set in space, the women would be serving coffee. You know what I mean? The tragic reality of it is that back then, nobody knew how to write women. And, the mere fact that they're, Ridley Scott, I believe that the Ripley character was written as a man. And that right there is the perfect foundation for it. Because she is not feminized. I mean, she is, of course, because she's Sigourney Weaver. And they do that a little more by making her a mother figure in Aliens. But here, they give her everything. She has nothing, so of course, she has everything. She has, she's got one over on everyone. She's the smartest person in the room in every scene that she's in.
And that's, I guess, true of both of these Alien sequels so far.
Yeah.
She's always the one who actually knows what's going on. But no one's listening to her.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, especially with Aliens, where they make her a mother. They take a character who is, pretty middle of the road in the first Alien film, where she's just really just trying to not die.
Exactly. It's the naked prey in space.
But then in the second one, she's actually trying as hard as she can to survive, but also to save this child now.
That's the thing. That's the kind of the catch there, is that they make her survival about somebody else's well-being. It's not enough for her to survive. She spends so much of the last act in a furious panic over whether or not the child will live, which is so American. It is so predictably American.
It is, but at the same time, at no point is she doing anything stupid or making any
she is still
decisions that shouldn't be made by a logical mind, because she's, too caught up in
exactly.
she's still very much
and the thing about
Ellen
it too,
Ripley.
which is so great, is that they've got those scenes where Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen sort of have to react to her mission to go back and save Newt, and Lance Henriksen as this kind of fussy non-human, which sort of the movie codes him as a touch feminine. He says don't do it because he's sort of cowardly, and Michael Biehn says, yeah, go for it, because he himself has been sort of placed in this feminine context by not being able to, he can't even stand up on his own anymore. She has to carry him, which is pretty interesting. And so what the movie very, I think it gets itself out of a lot of trouble by sending her on this mission, which is motivated by this kind of, very feminine impulse. To save the child. I'm saying feminine, I mean the movie's definition of feminine. And it turns out to be, of course, the way that she asserts her dominance, because this other thing comes after her and she totally murders it in the coolest way imaginable. But here, what's awesome is they give her a couple of potential love interests and she sleeps with Charles Dance, but then they take him away from her in the scene that's coming up. That is very distressing and very troubling to watch. I still really the sound design in this movie is dynamite, by the way. It's worth pointing that out. When the alien's proboscis tongue thing goes through his skull, it's one of the most disgusting and troubling sounds I've ever heard. So what they do is they kind of make her this very 90s, for lack of a smarter term, woman, in that she gets to sleep with this guy.
And he's the one that goes away.
Yeah, exactly. Her. He's the one who pays for it. She doesn't. Unless I think that there's a kind of a, maybe a transference kind of thing to be done here, where she sleeps with this guy and then she's pregnant with the alien baby. But it's, it's the kind of thing where the father's rescinding responsibility. The father's not around. The father is a monster. So, they don't saddle her with anybody. They don't make her pick a guy. She repeatedly asks for mercy from these people, and they won't give it to her because they need her for something. And it's not sex, but it sort of kind of is, because what they're asking her to do is play mother to this monster that's down there killing everybody. It's a very, very loaded, subtextual, there's so many layers to this thing.
Well, that's why this movie is so amazing. Is there's so much going on at all times.
Absolutely.
So much to think about in a way that there's not in Alien and Aliens.
Exactly.
They're both brilliant, but completely straightforward.
Well, they're okay, so Alien is basically like a beautiful piece of Renaissance art. That's sort of the way that I've always thought of Ridley Scott, as like the court painter of Hollywood. Whereas David Fincher is he's taking textbooks and psychology, and he's just tearing them apart and seeing where the pieces land. He's going through these paintings and he's cutting them up with a box cutter, and he's pasting them where he needs them to be. He's a collagist in many ways. If you're wondering why occasionally our voices get softer, it's because we're going to the other room to refill our drinks. Okay, here's that beautiful shot of the bed being pressed down by the alien, which is interesting that they hint at its weight being great here. Because it's birthed from the buffalo, so I assume it's massive, and it must be heavier for having the sulfuric acid for blood here. Here are these weird shots that he tried out, where occasionally they're not fisheye. Forgive me for not knowing the lens. I really should, but occasionally things are very distorted and close by. And there it is behind the curtain, beautiful, terrifying, and thus exeunt Charles Dance. Yeah, for years, this is how I would see these guys in other movies, oh god, that shot of his head, it's so upsetting. It
explodes.
I went out on my, there you go, first bad processed puppet shot of the movie, but that right
that
there,
one is
that's
wonderful.
A beautiful shot right there. That's, to me, this is the most life they've ever given the creatures in these shots.
Well,
here.
because there's always a sense, as much as I love these movies, that when you see it, I can't even get over how good that looks.
Right?
That's the best it's ever looked.
Yep.
Because you watch them, and whether it be Alien or Aliens, there's always the sequences. I remember watching Alien, and coming across the shot of when Tom Skerritt finally.
Oh yeah, and the
dies.
thing leaps at
And
him.
it kind of opens its arms.
Yeah.
And you know, I love the movie.
Well,
but it's kind of silly.
Well, I think that the thing here, these shots of everybody praying is great, and then Charles Dance yelling at everyone, or Charles Dutton rather. But the thing about the Alien movie is that they understood that it was much the same as the Jaws shark. The shark is not working, so let's film it in as low light as possible. There's that great kind of bewitching shot towards the end when it's attacking Parker and Lambert. It's kind of doing this very sort of balletic movement across the floor. It's not natural, and it works because it's so strange, but really what you're looking at is a dude in a suit.
You're looking at a dude in a suit.
And the same goes in Aliens, which the only thing is that they're jumping and they're hopping and they're fast, but they're very obviously cheaper versions of the same suit. Here, it's all about the grossness. It's all about the tactile, disgusting moisture,
all the fluid running up its
and that
face.
is what Fincher brought to this.
Well, it's
movie.
actually the
Absolutely
first time
anything.
too that even if it is someone in a suit, it doesn't look like it a lot
No.
of the time. So
No.
it's when
Well, the motion is so perfect. I think Tom Woodruff, as the actor behind the suit, it reminds me a lot of David Prowse. Before he was Darth Vader, he was in one of Hammer Films' final movies before they collapsed the first time, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. He's in a terrible suit as this kind of proto-man, but you can tell that he's really trying to get some acting, underneath this horrible suit. And Tom Woodruff is blessed with a suit that allows for maximum mobility. There's a great shot in the very confusing end sequence in the lead works where he turns around very quickly, and that is very much in line with the kind of animal. Oh, there's a little hair in the gate there. It's very much in line with the animal nature of the thing, and I think that in Aliens they don't quite respect the fact that these are wild animals. There's a little too much calculation to some of the movement. I think about the scene where Ridley crawls into the nest, and the aliens kind of come out of the wall to watch her, and the Queen sort of like calms them. I sort of reject that kind of coordination from monsters like this. Not that they aren't sort of human. There we go. Here's Vincenzo Nicolai cleaning.
There it is.
Cleaning again
Just
after a horrible murder.
Mopping up the blood.
Mopping up the blood.
And it's funny because I think you're totally right, and at the same time, that's one of my favorite sequence in all of Aliens is when they sort of pop a ceiling tile,
right,
and they look through, and they're all crawling at them.
Yes,
because that's one of the only times, really, in the first two, where they're moving in an alien way. They're not just looking like aliens.
Yes,
they're actually
exactly.
very serpentine,
they're sort of like,
and like
they're sort of they're insectoid,
and it's so scary.
Oh
and
my
that's
god,
like,
it's so troubling.
and
that great, I think it must be flutes. I think James Horner used a lot of flute on the soundtrack for Aliens, and there's that great trill right when Michael Biehn sees them crawling and just starts shooting at the
jump
ceiling.
back out and opening fire on the ceiling tiles. But that's what the alien in a lot, not all of this of Alien 3, but a lot of the shots, it finally is legitimately scary.
Yep.
But I mean, at the same time, I don't know how long we've been watching this right now, but we've only seen the thing like twice.
Yeah,
like
it's killed 4 people now. It got rid of obviously just killed Brian Glover as Andrews, who I may have miscorrectly identified as Ralph Brown earlier. That's my mistake, but anyway. Christopher John Fields was Raines, the fellow with the floppy dog hat, and then Leon Herbert as Boggs, and then earlier in the film they killed Murphy, who was Christopher Fairbank, who I believe still shows up in things from time to time. So it's killed 4 people, and it's shown up for a total of about 10 seconds of screen time.
Right, it's barely been in the movie, and especially in a film series, you have to do bigger and better.
Right.
And Alien 3 is almost like Aliens was the last one, and then they kind of didn't know what to do for a while, because who in their right mind would go, all right, we're going to make a third Alien film. Let's make it just one. Like, we've had her fight the Queen,
right,
and a whole
exactly.
nest worth
but I
of
mean,
aliens.
yeah, in a sense, it's sort of the only thing you can do. You've seen a billion of them, and you've seen a gigantic one. Why not try to peg it down here and sort of, start from scratch? The problem is that David Fincher has no interest in scaring people.
No, that's not why this movie exists.
No, this movie exists as a colossal bummer. It's one of the biggest bummers to ever come out of 20th Century Fox. Oh, man.
Well, it even makes me think, like, the The tagline is 3 times the terror.
No, it's not.
No, it isn't.
No, it's not. It's barely 1 times the terror.
It's only one alien. It's
Yeah.
it's the exact same formula as the first movie.
Exactly, and that's the crazy thing to me is that, you know, on its face, and everybody said this at the time, it's like, oh, it's just the first one. There's this, that, and the other, and they, you know, it's her against and it's like, I'm sorry, how could you watch these 2 movies and think they're the same?
Even remotely similar.
They are so different. I mean, David Fincher's style, even this early in his career, is so different from Ridley Scott. I mean, I think I would have to think that it would take somebody who is just ignoring the particulars to think that there is any real similarity between the execution of Ridley Scott versus the execution of David Fincher. I mean, especially here where he's showing off left and right. You know what I mean? I think of it, you know, obviously I just did the Phantom of the Paradise, which is one of the best show-off movies of all time. You know, where the camera is just booking across that set and doing whatever the hell Brian De Palma wanted it to do. And here, he tries everything. There's that crazy POV shot towards the end. There are pans, there are tracks, there are zooms, there are weird lenses, there are strange angles. You know, he's above you, and he's below you, and he's in the air ducts, and he's below the floor, and he's under the sea, or whatever. Like, he's... Every single thing he could have tried, he did, and it doesn't ever feel distracting, except I would argue in those few scenes with a very strange, distorted lens. It'll happen again in a moment when they drop that weird detonator stick natch thing on the floor, and there's that shot of it like slowly hitting the ground, which will come up soon when they hatch their disastrous explosives plan. Here's Pete Postlethwaite, the much missed Pete Postlethwaite. Who is finally a real character in this film. Ralph Brown there, who plays Aaron, I think was most recently in Chandler Park's Stoker as the deputy who gets super murdered at the end. You barely recognize him. I think it's so great that, I don't know if Park Chan-wook has any love for this movie. I kind of assume that if you're going to hire these guys, with the exception, maybe, of Pete Postlethwaite, you're sort of hiring them because you like this movie, but maybe I'm being...
Hey, I saw you in Alien 3.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would... I mean, I would hire all of these people, you know, if I had money and they had... Like, I would ask every single one of them because they all have such brilliant faces, and they're all so expressive. I mean, poor Pete Postlethwaite was never bad in anything. He was always great. And it's so funny that after watching him play character roles for so long, I went back and watched him in The Lost World, where he plays this alpha male hunter. I was like, man, that's insane that was the first thing I saw him do. Like, and believed him, because that's not the character he usually played. But of course he could do anything, because he was a genius.
I don't know. I'm noticing more and more as we watch this that every shot is, you know, if they're not doing like this silhouetted, you know,
right.
sequence from Full Metal Jacket,
they're
doing these sequences where, you know, no one's really moving. Everything is very like tableau, almost, where characters are sitting. The color is very, very strong, whether it be blue or orange or whatever color they want to do, and things aren't moving. Like it's almost as if Finch only let like one character move per shot, or per frame. Especially earlier on, where you know you're seeing all the prisoners standing around in that big multi-tiered area. Every single composition, only one person moves.
Right.
And it's the kind of thing where, like, I would be so fine with having, you know, posters or paintings of almost every shot in this movie.
I mean, even you look at these things, these sort of montage shots, where all you're meant to do is suggest acting. He's still putting so much work into this.
Right. I mean, the whole movie is, to me, cribbed from like Goya or William Blake, or just like
lots of Bosch.
These very visceral shots where nothing even needs to move. Mm-hmm. Like you're watching a movie, but you could just be watching stills over and over and over for 2.5 hours.
Absolutely,
and it would be fine.
Well, you know, and I think there's a kind of a lazy shorthand in a lot of writing where you say like every frame of this you could hang it on the wall, and while that I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, you look at something like, you know, that has beautiful detail and very excellent use of the rule of thirds there. I wouldn't necessarily want it on my wall,
Right.
but
It's not every frame.
it's not every frame, but there's like, I mean, look at the, okay, so there's the potential there where you start with Pete Foss all the way, you come back and they planned the drip, like, and they're right there, there's action, it's very much feels like, he's taking a kind of Soviet montage approach to,
absolutely.
there's momentum, there's constant momentum.
It's almost like I don't actually know Fincher's history in terms
and
of,
there he is in the background again, like you're saying, one like there's foreground and there's background. The alien at the top of the tower here, this poor bastard's about to come to a terrible end.
But I don't know Fincher's history in terms of his education or anything like
Right.
that. But I do know that the Alien 3 feels like somebody who just came out of film school, not because of it's unsure of itself or it's amateur.
Well, no, because it's so loaded with influences.
But it's so loaded with influences that it's just he wanted to get out everything that he loved.
Well, I remember we talked to Joe Swanberg years and years ago, and I'll never forget him saying that his take on film school is it's where you go to get all your bad
ideas
out of your system. And that this feels very much like, his music video work. He got to like play around with, form a little bit, and now he just had all these tricks and all this stuff that he loved. He had a grab bag of influences, and he was just like, let's try it all.
What's so interesting is that even in a movie that he's making where he is creating this hodgepodge of influences and things that he loves and things that he wants to try, none of them pull you out of the film.
Well, no, because it's not like Brian De Palma pushing a baby carriage down a train station stairway where you're like, oh, well, that's just Potemkin.
That's just the Odessa steps.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's all worked very organically into this. There isn't even, as much as you can sort of predict where a handful of these shots came from. It's not as though you're looking at this and going like, oh yeah, well this is clearly John Ford or this is clearly Peter Sullivan. You can guess, but that's the beauty is that you have to guess.
Right. Nothing is so overt.
Yeah, exactly. Like
that's pulling you out of the.
David Cameron's very astute Passion of Joan of Arc comment seems true to me, and I believe that it's true, but who knows? Because he won't talk about it, which, if anything, sort of preserves the mystique of this very, very brilliant film. His refusal to talk about it because of how terrible the experience of making it was sort of preserves the idea that this is a sort of one-of-a-kind movie, and there's this era of mystery and beauty and the unknowable about it. This scene coming up here is first of all one of the reasons the assemble cut is infinitely superior to the theatrical cut. Not that there needs to be more reasons for that, but this whole sequence here, I love it so much. Okay, so Junior and Gregor here are the two of the guys who tried to rape her earlier in the film. Peter Guinness is Gregor, the one on fire who's kind of shaking and convulsing. Junior there has got a bandage on his head from where Charles Dutton beat him with a stick. So this is such a brilliant little piece of writing, and it's so perfectly kind of of the moment. This very bleak little thing here. So he's limping. He's a pathetic figure. He's bandaged up. He's got no reason to live here. And then he gets caught between the rest of the group and the door where they're going to keep the alien, right? And they're, sort of trying to save him is Ripley, somebody that he tried to sexually assault 3 scenes ago. And Junior, sort of realizing that he's got literally one chance left at redemption here, says, "Come and get me, fucker," and then runs in where the thing can get him. And then they close the door on him, and then you hear him screaming through the door. That to me is I feel like that kind of redemption also echoes throughout Fincher's career. You've got, Forrest Whitaker going back into the hotel, into the room the apartment at the end of Panic Room. And you've got Lisbeth Salander coming back to save Daniel Craig at the end of a Dragon Tattoo. There's this it's sort of unhealthy catharsis all throughout his career. That scene to me has the same kind of impact as Andrew Garfield saying, you better lawyer up, asshole, because when I come back, I'm not just coming back for my equal part, I'm coming back for everything. Like, it's exactly that kind of thing where you shouldn't really be touched by it, but you are. You know, it's kind of a Joseph Losey-esque wrong set of values. It's finding order in the most insane circumstances. You know, because the whole thing with, you know, the Facebook movie is that you've got these young people who are suddenly billionaires, and they have to navigate this world of, you know, politics and finance that they never understood. Ditto here, you've got people who are used to living a celibate life 1 billion miles from Earth, and now they have to sort of rebuild their idea of morality here. And again, it's the same reason that I think so many of Fincher's films take place in imaginary cities. You know what I mean? Panic Room and Fight Club may actually take place in real places, and The Game may too. I completely forget, but you think about Seven.
I think The Game is one of the only ones that outwardly tells you where it's happening.
Right.
Because
well, I mean, Panic Room is very obviously in New York.
Right, but I don't think they ever even say it. Like, I mean, you can assume.
Right.
But I think that's true of most of his movies, where there's no log line, there's no anything going. This is where we are.
Where is The Game? It's San Francisco?
The Game is San Francisco, but like I think that Seven is supposed to be Los Angeles.
Well, no, Seven they never tell you because it's New York.
Tell you.
But it's New York surrounded by desert, is what it is.
Right.
It's so obviously New York,
so
but
not,
it's just
it's not important.
It's like Springfield.
Right. It's not important.
No, it's not.
This is a city that is to these people a terrible place.
Well, yeah,
it's raining all the time.
Yes,
and
yet it's surrounded by desert. Which I love. Right. It's raining all the time in the desert.
So they don't bother.
No, of course not. He doesn't care. I mean, it's the same thing as North Carthage, Mississippi, or Missouri, rather, in Gone Girl. You know?
Yeah, they're just, you're in a place and these things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
The setting doesn't even really matter.
Yeah, because where you are ultimately is the movie's idea of a city.
Right.
You know? And again, like, The Game may as well take place in Blade Runner's Los Angeles.
Right.
Because doesn't he spend a lot of that film in Chinatown?
There's a lot going on where he's like in the mansion, he's in Chinatown, he's in alleys running with what's her name?
Deborah Kara Unger.
Deborah Kara Unger, just all that stuff where it's ambiguous, it doesn't even matter.
Right.
But then I actually think that if anything, Dragon Tattoo might be the most specific because it's one of the only movies where they're like, all right, well, we're in Sweden.
Right, exactly. We're in Sweden for some reason.
And they turn Christopher Plummer's compound into this very big. It's almost like
that's the great thing about it is that it's got its own weird internal geography where he points up the hill and he's like, that's where my Nazi brother lives.
Right, like the whole family lives there. It's almost
so
like when
awesome.
they're first showing up to Shutter Island, it's just like here's everything.
Right. Yep.
This is where this whole movie is probably going to actually happen.
Exactly.
And so concern yourself with this and only this. It doesn't matter that
if you
Stockholm is 4 hours away by bullet train.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. You're here now, so it's going to get really scary really fast because you're trapped here.
Yeah, that's the important. There's a bubble. There's a bubble in these films, and people have their bubbles invaded by this or that or the other, you know.
But he manages. I don't know. He manages to pull the most human elements out because I mean the thing is, as far as I can tell, there is not a bad performance in a David Fincher film either. He is pretty good about even out of the most one-liner extra stuff. No one ever phones it in or gives like a bad line.
Right, I think there are strangely calibrated performances, but I tend to agree with you. I think that everybody is, for the most part, very...
You know, there's no more dead cops.
Exactly. He's not Christopher Nolan with his extras.
Kind of sequences in David Fincher
Things are worse than ever.
Right. There's no moments in a
place.
David Fincher movie where thank you for saying that. I thought I was the only one.
No,
there's a couple of those in Interstellar too,
yeah.
and I laughed my ass off.
My good friend Eli Iannacone pointed that out to me. I like your place.
But there's no sequence. There's no sequence in a David Fincher movie where I can hear a line reading and be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like,
Take two, please.
Everything's fine because he he cares so much about every facet that he can control.
Exactly.
So
well, and that's exactly it. Is that his movies are all about control and the loss of control and the betrayal of walking into your office and realizing that everything's been taken from you. Or this thing here, where she can't control the thing in her stomach or control the organization coming here to take it from her.
Right.
She can't even make these morons listen to her. That again is so much a part of it. You got Brad Pitt, who thinks he's in control, who gets handed a box with his wife's head in it.
Well, that's Fight Club is all about control.
Yeah, and the game, same thing.
Yeah,
you completely are in no control of any of your environment. Panic Room, the same thing. It's two people fighting for control of a space.
Right.
Or Zodiac, fighting for control of a narrative of this thing and trying to find reason and order and a culprit where the situation just flatly rejects one. And whoever you think the Zodiac killer is, you've got no proof. Arthur Lee Allen looks like a great suspect, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he didn't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that his subject matter reflects his own style.
Yeah, and his own experience.
So much.
And I feel like so much of that comes from this
movie,
experience.
because he had no control.
he
was stuck.
Yes.
And especially, I can't even imagine being a young filmmaker who basically, I'm sure many times, saw his entire career on the line.
Exactly.
Because he went, you know what? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to Alien.
Yep.
I'm going to make the third Alien film.
Well, at the same time, too, he must have, there must have been a certain amount of momentum here, because he goes from interning at ILM and helping Return of the Jedi get made to making some of the most watched music videos in an era where they were slowly becoming the most dominant, certainly the most watched art form on the planet. And then they hand him this. There must have been such excitement and such possibility. Oh, here we go. Here's some lighting for you. Oh man, and then Paul McGann gracefully exits the narrative. Oh, what a woeful shot!
That's probably the worst one in the whole movie.
Oh, I think it gets worse. I think it gets so much worse. Oh, it's such a shame.
Yeah.
If only George Lucas could come back and work some of his digital magic.
Well, that was, I remember when I first went to sit down and watch Alien 3. That was one of the warnings. That was one of the warnings I got from my friends. He was like, listen, they do this weird thing and it looks digital and it doesn't work. And that's gonna, if anything is gonna take you out of this experience, it's gonna be the fact that it doesn't look good.
Yeah, the Alien itself in long shots does not work.
And I think that, I don't know what. This is probably going to sound bad. I don't know what normal people think of Alien 3.
I think they hate it. I think if 2, maybe 3 weeks after I posted my essay, which is at this point I want to say a year ago, I guess.
Yeah, it was about a year ago.
About a year ago.
That was the first one,
almost
right?
a year ago. It was the very first one in the series, and I've been obsessed with this movie for a super long time. I had a lot to say. My original draft was probably 12, 15 minutes long. I don't remember. Matt made me cut it down, thank God, because it was Looney Tunes. But anyway, a gentleman commented on my Vimeo page, not on the Roger Ebert page where they're all hosted. RogerEbert.com very graciously have been hosting me all this time. Anyway, this guy posted something like 15 full comments. Because the Vimeo comment only gives you a certain number of characters.
Oh, so he just had to keep going.
He just went da 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 da. This movie was for so many people the equivalent of going out on a date with somebody you thought you liked. Like you're on a third date with a guy who's really nice, and then
find out.
Yeah, and then he takes you into the back seat of his Buick and does something really awful to you. That is, for so many people, what this felt like. They felt like they had been taken advantage of by somebody that they had grown to trust. And I, on the one hand, completely understand it, but at the same time, that's the whole point of the experience, is to kind of remove people from the comfortable ideas of blockbusters. He made a sci-fi movie. He made an actual troubling sci-fi movie. He did not make the film that conformed to a safe narrative. And at the same time, it reflected his experience doing this because he thought he was moving up to the big times where things made sense, and he got there and he found out that nothing made sense, and that it was a crazy fun house where goblins are in control of everything, and they show up on set and they say, "You're doing a terrible job, we'll fax you the script later, you hack." I can't even imagine how frustrating that must have been.
Especially after coming off of the first two, which they are drastically different movies, and
yeah, there is
they're safe.
Yes,
in that they are, Alien
well, they are you know what they are? They're roller coasters. They're I mean, one obviously is better than the other, but they're rides, and they have beats that you can understand. You know what I mean? Like as crazy and subversive as killing Tom Skerritt in the first Alien is, there's a kind of a roller coaster logic to it, where you're like, oh my god, what in the world is going to happen now? It throws you in the best possible way. And again, that whole movie was engineered for shock and surprise. You think about the first trailer for that movie, which was just an egg hatching, and it said, "In space, no one can hear you scream." My dad still talks about that trailer and how perfect it was, because it made you want to see it, because you didn't know anything. And so people walked into that film completely blind, and then they looked for clues, which came, but they came in the wrong direction, and that was exactly it. It was Ridley Scott understands the theatrical experience. Even now, when he makes movies like Robin Hood or Exodus, he's making them because there is a tradition of their working as sort of very, I would say, exclusively cinematic properties. There's a reason that nobody's buying Robin Hood stories in paperback anymore. You go to the theater to watch that kind of thing. Right. There's a history, there's a backstory, there's a tradition. And, I don't think Robin Hood works exactly, but, well, I mean, I don't know that it works at all. But there is, it was an honorable attempt to step into a piece of cinematic history and to kind of do that sort of, roller coaster thing that he does so well. Gladiator isn't one of my favorite movies, but I'd be crazy to say that it doesn't work. There is something to that experience and to coming into that genre and appropriating those things. And I think Ridley Scott is, I think at his best he plays the audience like a fiddle. I think he knows what he's doing. He absolutely knows what he's doing. And David Fincher, I believe, he's after something else. He's after something different, and he's after something darker and more, like you're saying, humane. There is no denying or to me anyway, there's no denying the sort of like wrenching emotional state that Ripley finds herself in here, where she has had everything taken from her, and still the universe takes and takes and takes and takes.
And now she's growing the very thing
that
she's
is
been fighting for 2 films now.
Exactly.
2.5 films now.
Yep.
She is now responsible for propagating the thing she's trying to stop.
And the best thing
that's real shit.
Yeah.
that's so dark.
It's
and
really
awful.
And the thing too about it is that there was this note of finality that I'm sure so many people were kind of thrilled about. Like, oh, all right, well, we're done. At least nobody can make this any worse. But there's the thing about it is, even presented with the worst imaginable set of circumstances based on what she's been through, she does not cry.
No.
She doesn't like throw up her hands and say, I quit. She is still a woman of agency. She's still a character who knows exactly what has to happen.
And it's fantastic to see it, because you don't get it. You never get it in at least popular American cinema.
Right.
You don't get female characters that operate this way.
I mean, even to take your Scarlett Johansson example, you look at the 2 characters that she played this year. Well, 3, I guess. You've got forgive me, Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff is her name, I believe, in Captain America 2.
Then you've got Under the Skin. So you've got, so in Captain America 2, Scarlett Johansson basically cries when her father figure, Nick Fury, dies, right? Mm-hmm. She still does whatever she does there, but she's playing second fiddle to Captain America the whole time. You know what I mean? I'm not arguing. She's the sidekick.
She's the sidekick, and she is still coded. She is still coded in very obvious ways. She is enthralled to the Nick Fury character, and she's upset when he might die. You got Under the Skin. Under the Skin is great in that there's the character has realizations and comes to understand that it is possible for her to have control of her own, her body and her and her will, but ultimately she is still thwarted by man. You know what I mean? By men who do not understand and who view, female sexuality as this, kind of horrifying, predatory thing. And then you've got Lucy, in which she has to abandon humanity in order to become this sort of, altered dimensional Akira being that she winds, that she needs to be Tetsuo the gorgeous man or whatever. There are still problems. Those are great empowered characters, and they're fantastic and they're fun, and they are three distinct and wonderful performances from one of the greatest and most interesting actors working today. But the characters themselves still can't quite escape the problems with the fact that men wrote all three of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they only understand femininity as it goes so far. Whereas Ripley, despite horrible circumstances, is in control and will always find a way to be in control. And that is amazing and totally still refreshing, almost, 33 years after this came out? That's not right. I'm sorry. My math is terrible. 23 years. Wow.
Yeah, 20.
Math. We went to film school, everyone. Forgive us.
But it makes me think about, the idea of, say, if they were going to make, one more Alien film.
Right. Which I guess they will, technically, when they make Prometheus 2, which brings us right up to Alien's back door.
Right. But if we were going to make another Alien film with Sigourney Weaver.
Right.
Somehow.
Right.
Despite the fact that she is aged, and we have to somehow make that work with the logic of the plot.
Because when we last leave her, she was a clone coming back to Earth at the end of Resurrection.
She's very old at the end of Resurrection. She's hundreds of years later.
Resurrection, by the way. Anyway, keep going.
But if they were going to try, to make one more with her older and everything else.
Yeah, her sort of aged clone.
It makes me wonder what the hell would happen if they would.
They would find a way. It's the
If
sad
they would,
thing,
if
but
they
it
would
wouldn't.
figure out a way to make sure that, despite like you just cited a Scarlett Johansson examples that are still hindered.
Yeah.
If they would be
is
able
there a writer
to,
out there who could give Ripley the agency that she has had all along?
right?
You
Despite anyone's opinion of the films,
Right.
she never loses it. Even in Resurrection, she's still got it. And
she's confused for sure, but she is still in control, and she has the sort of power to kill her own child in that film, which is still pretty empowering. There again, Chinese newspaper on the back of the wall.
Yeah.
This movie and its production design. This movie is a triumph of production design in every imaginable way. Watch this sometime with the sound off, as we're kind of doing right now, and then just look at literally every texture and every piece of writing all throughout this film, and try not to,
How can't you believe it?
I know! That's the thing!
How can't you believe it?
I don't know.
Oh, this is happening somewhere in space.
It's so obviously happening. Maybe that's why I kept watching it, because I felt that somewhere in the universe this was still going on.
But that's I don't know. I think about a lot of the more modern science fiction films that I've seen, and
Right.
for some reason I'm jumping to the last two Tom Cruise movies.
Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion.
Edge of Tomorrow, which I loved. I
Well,
love Edge of Tomorrow.
There's an important addendum there. You look at the Emily Blunt character, still very sexualized in that
Yep.
film. A great character.
extremely, and very strong female, but very sexualized.
Absolutely.
But as much as I love Edge of Tomorrow and the
Me
fact
too,
that they're
by the way.
changing the title.
Well, yeah. You mean Live, Die, Repeat?
Yeah, Live, Die, Repeat. What I can't help forgetting is that about a year before Edge of Tomorrow came out, a movie called Oblivion came out.
Which was basically Solaris with, D minuses.
Yeah, it was a movie that visually I thought was gorgeous, but that was really all it had going for
That's it.
It was the most fangless.
And it was completely just bloodless, whatever. And the thing is, all of its best visual ideas came from better films.
Right. But it makes me think about the idea of them. That's again why Alien 3 confounds me. Is in a system where the studio was so overbearing in how the film was going to be made. How on earth did David Fincher preserve his vision as much as he did?
Right.
Because you've got a movie that's still so moody and so dark, and so I just said it, but it's so much darker than the previous two. Where
by leaps and bounds.
It might as well not even be in the same.
Well,
franchise.
it's kind of the ultimate like Gen X, kind of depressed grunge rock movie where you're just like, fuck tomorrow. Like, it has this kind of post-punk defeatism. This kind of lots of silence and stillness and just anger everywhere. These sets look angry and sad at the same time. And meanwhile, you're right about Oblivion, because Oblivion is a film that stole its best ideas and yet made $1 billion. And the thing is that, like, it's so kind of faceless. It's
it's the most vanilla movie I've seen in a long time. And what's funny is when I was watching it, I was like, well, this is okay. Like,
it's unoffensive, to be sure.
Right. There weren't any points in Oblivion where I was like, this is bad filmmaking, or this is bad writing, or this is bad anything. I was like, this is totally middle of the road.
Exactly.
This is totally run of the mill.
Fine.
But, like, the idea that a movie like Alien 3 was thrown into the fire. Just like, you know what? Fuck this movie. Everything about it. And it's like, no, but look at it though.
I should put it at this point. We've probably just said, come on, the visuals. But like, seriously, look, the cobwebs next to the moisture. And
this movie
so thorough.
Just makes me feel like I'm watching, oh God.
Okay, here's a great scene here. That like the fake alien pipe thing right there. Like she sees it because she wants to see it. Again, a little psychological aside, totally missing from so many other things.
Right, and it's not like there's no filter on the lens. There's no anything.
No.
This is just. It's objective. That's the way that Fincher does these things. He's
very pulled back,
objective, and just like, you know what? Maybe she's seeing something. Maybe she isn't.
Maybe she's not.
Who fucking cares?
Exactly.
Like, you're this is what you're gonna see right now,
exactly.
and if you don't like it, then
instead, what you get is a mess of Tim Burton-y crickets.
Right. But what I always think about when I watch, especially this movie, is as far as production design is concerned, is it's almost like
there is again. Here's a kind of like crib of the shot in the first Alien when he comes out of and certainly in the second Aliens when they come out of the walls. Here's that kind of version of it.
Absolutely terrifying.
So
it's terrifying every time, and that suit is
perfect.
Gangbusters.
It really works really well. But anyway, what you were saying.
What I'm trying to remember, like. It's almost as if Terry Gilliam inhaled a bottle of Ritalin and then did production design for this movie. It feels so much like so many sequences in Brazil.
It is very indebted to Brazil.
And Time Bandits might be a little too fantastical, but
there's I think that the lesson to be learned here is that, and I think we've gotten away from this in a really disheartening way, is that whether it's Time Bandits or Brazil or Munchausen or any of those films, is that Terry Gilliam, and I think he works best when he's in this mode, is that he was one of the most tactile filmmakers of his generation, of any generation, is that you feel like you could reach out and touch the grossness hanging from every light fixture.
And that's what's going on in this movie.
Exactly.
Without question, it feels so real. And honestly, I think that's one of the things that, whether people would ever notice it, is one of the most successful features of the Alien franchise.
Well, precisely. It's a kind of it's a mixture of this. I mean, look right here at the things adorning his cell here. That kind of insectoid looking. I don't even know what that is. It's like a fleur de lis hanging from the bars, and the cross on his nightstand. There is. Throughout the series, there's a sense of everything being lived in. The first three films, you get a very real sense of who everybody is based on the environments that you find them in.
And that was a movement that absolutely came out of the late 70s. Honestly, with first Star Wars, where they were
absolutely.
we're gonna make a sci-fi movie that's dirty.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a sci-fi movie where it's like it's not 2001 where the ship is spotless and everything is
Right.
you know, it's super clean and futuristic. It's we're watching a movie about this is probably what the future will actually look like.
And then of course that came out of his, kind of gearhead sensibility in American Graffiti, which of course was born out of the whole writer-director New Hollywood movement. I mean, you look at something like, even somebody like John Huston, who was, by the time he made this film, I mean, well into his career. He's 30 years into his directing career, and longer than that into his screenwriting. He makes Fat City, which is the most perfectly dust-speckled character study of all time. And he's got a young Jeff Bridges playing a guy who's about to be depressed for the rest of his life, and Stacy Keach, who has been depressed all of his life, romancing Susan Tyrrell, who is the most beautifully crazy person who's ever lived. And I think that whole approach, I think, informed everything beautifully. If things are too spotless and too perfect, there has to be a reason. There has to be a sort of Apocalypse Now thing where you're crafting an alternate version of events. You're making an insane Fantasia version of the Vietnam War as a series of paintings. These amazing, roving tableau through the jungle. You're crafting this decadent, Renaissance version of events, equally influenced by, whoever, Picasso, as well as, they died with their boots on. But we've gotten way off topic now.
It's okay. I'm just thinking, I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I just watched him drop her to the floor, and the camera moved at the exact speed that she moved, which is a total Fincher thing to do, which is just like, no, we're going to do it until we get it right. Like, she's going to stay in the exact section of the frame that I want her in the entire time she's moving, and we're just going to drop with her, and it's going to be perfect, which seems silly, but that's the kind of thing that
he does.
That makes his work so amazing to watch. It's almost as if he's walking around with a band of robots driving his cameras for him, and he's like, "Listen, I need you to follow this actor, or I need you to dolly in at just this speed."
Right.
The amount of control in every frame of his films is mind blowing.
More Chinese lettering on the wall. This is a beautiful shot right here. It's got all these great conflicting geometric shapes here, which I feel like he also loves. This is another awesome thing, is when I first saw this and they're drinking Coke out of the glass bottles like that, I'm thinking to myself, what a dumb 90s thing. But it's currently 2014 and they still make that, so I don't think it's all that far-fetched. I'm sure somebody at Coke was like, yeah, get us in that movie. Yeah, you're going to have to put Coke in your movie for us, please. Now, it's this scene here that well, first of all, there's some more very obviously ADR'd from incomplete elements here during Charles Dutton's speech here, his kind of Idris Elba in Pacific Rim speech, which I wonder how much people actually paid attention. Again, there's so many, like, despite this film's, kind of disdain, the fact that so many people gave this movie short shrift when it came out and really don't talk about it at all, there are so many things in this, so many elements that recur throughout the last 25 years of filmmaking. I know, again, my math is wrong there, but again, it was very much, I felt the same way watching the very bizarre Civil War zombie film Grey Knight, starring Adrian Pasdar and a young Billy Bob Thornton and Martin Sheen. I kind of assumed they made it during downtime on Gettysburg, but I have no proof there. But it's the kind of thing where these movies come along and audiences sort of reject them, and critics do as well, so there's this kind of agreement that they're just going to cannibalize them and take from what they need so that they can keep going. It's a kind of a cutthroat artistic appropriation. And of course it happens constantly, you see it all the time where these movies get, they sort of vanish from the public consciousness, but their ideas are clearly strong and good, and they keep reappearing. I mean, that's sort of the foundation of so many of my video essays for the Unloved series, is that these movies happen, nobody really responds to them, but the ideas are clearly good enough that other people steal from them all the time. Here's another wonderful Fincher detail: the fact that Gregor there is the whole time that he's having this conversation, he's shooting himself up with morphine, which I love. There's weird. That to me is a very sort of Terry Gilliam thing. And here's Ripley turned away from everybody while Charles S. Dutton kind of talks up this fight, which she's clearly had enough of. All she wants to do is kill the monster, and she can't really face the real consequences of this. Also worth pointing out that much the same way that the film kind of that the original Alien kind of tricked people into thinking that Tom Skerritt would be the hero, this film winds up with a last character that you don't really know all that well. If you go back and watch it again, you sort of get to know Danny Webb's character Morse up there. And, he does have a very loud, obnoxious personality. So it's, of course, in perfectly keeping with Fincher's whole thing that he would be the only person to walk out of here. But, again, it's little bits of Alien are here structurally. This whole sequence, I love it so much. I have seen this so many times, and I can't still really make sense of it. First of all, they name drop a character, Vincent, at some point, who we have never seen, nor will we. He is, for all intents and purposes, somebody they made up for this sequence. Because at no point during the rest of the movie, there's Eric, played by Niall Buggy, the guy who's sort of hot wiring the doors there, the handsome one. His character's name is, I think it's Troy. That's Paul Brennan. You've got Kevin, played by Philip Davis, who was very, very affecting in Vera Drake, Mike Leigh's film, who's done some amazing work. He was in the worst of the Howling sequels, but that's neither here nor there. He's got a great face. He's probably like the most enjoyably strange character actor face in the whole film. Just this kind of rodent-like visage. The big guy there, that's Clive Mantle, plays a character named Willie, who weirdly enough is listed as William in the credits, as if anybody ever called him that, which I've never understood. I love these two, their relationship, Gregor and Willie.
Well, that shot just makes me even fully realize how much Fincher manages to direct action out of focus in this movie.
Yep.
There's so many things going on the second or third plane of focus,
right?
And I think the most powerful one to me is when Ripley is looking at Newt's body,
right?
And the shot cuts to Charles Dance like 20 feet away from her,
yep.
And you're still
there with
way more interested in what Ripley is doing. So you're staring at this very blurry thing off to the side, and it's mind blowing that a director would choose to make that kind of decision with focus. Where, no, I want her back there.
Yep.
I want her out of focus.
Yeah. This whole sequence is so awesomely weird. I can't even imagine how anybody could have written this. I feel like this was born of the fact that they needed a conclusion. I seriously do. Because they needed to get rid of most of the cast, and they do very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's in such a, there's such a noble desperation to this whole sequence that never really adds up. Like, all these guys, nothing to live for anymore. You figure the minute the ship shows up, they're all going to die anyway. And Ripley convinces them to basically kill themselves for a reason. Now, this body here is never accounted for. That's supposed to be somebody who we have never met. Because at this point, everybody is accounted for, at least as far as the name actors. The cast list does not include any of these other people. They're extras who never got in the goddamn
we've
credits.
got these Evil Dead shots.
I know. This is such a weird thing, and to see them film this was so strange. I love these. They're so strange. So here's Danny Webb as Morse.
Well, it's almost like someone needs to just put together like an extremely detailed book or documentary on the making of this movie, but the problem is that someone is just going to be you or I.
Well, yeah.
We're the only ones that care.
Yeah, exactly.
But it makes me wonder, like, okay, we've got this very set apart set piece.
Yeah, with all these characters that we barely know.
At the end of the movie, and now they're the most important people.
Right, that's exactly it.
And we have to really, really care about them all. And this is where, people always complain about the fact that the screenplay was a total mess.
Well, it's just a hash.
But it's one of these things where, like, this is one of the only sequences that it's like a glaring problem. Where it's like, okay, what the hell is going
happening?
on?
Yeah,
and
they never explained the geography of this lead foundry.
Right.
And there's that happening, and then Danny Webb is there, and then what does that mean? That's the thing, is that they're trying to trap him into the little box that he winds up in, but you don't know what that means.
Right. They haven't laid any of this out because they either, this sequence was a very rushed ending they had to write or whatever.
Or something. Something must have happened. There's the arm here. By the way, I love this character, and him dying is like the most heartbreaking part of the movie for me, which is insane. Like, I feel like in some alternate universe where this sequence makes sense, it's even more heartbreaking that like they fail. You know what I mean? But like, so these guys all come out, and they're all confused, and nobody knows what's happening. They don't know where the alien is. They don't know where the other 4 characters are.
It's just, there's so much imbalance because you're watching a movie made by a filmmaker who is trying his darndest to give you the most competent version of what he's got in front of him. Yet, at the same time, the attention to detail that's being paid by whoever at this point is writing the screenplay or coming up with
Well, at this point, I think it was just David Giler and Walter Hill just writing in their hotel room. Was my impression of what's going on.
And just writing because they're being told to. And but it's like, it's amazing that to see that imbalance where, the director can't even go to said hotel room and be like, guys, come on.
Yeah,
like,
stop this.
Stop it.
He didn't have any clout. He didn't have any credit in the system.
Yeah, he was too young to...
The bad puppet processed in. So they're like that guy, Troy, Paul Brennan. I think he has literally one line. He says Junior just before Junior dies, but I still love him so much because, like, between the way that Fincher films him and the kind of beautiful expressions he's capable of here, he becomes a fully fleshed out character in 9 seconds of screen time. But then again, I've seen this movie 450 times, and I don't think anybody else is quite willing to give it that much time. Yeah, that's pretty bad puppet shot.
Yeah,
there.
that's some of the worst stuff, and it's that certainly brings the film down a peg for people who are just trying to and suspend disbelief. But I mean, I think personally, the main reason people have such a struggle with Alien 3 is because of how slow it is and how methodical it is, and frankly, how human it is. Because that was terrifying as shit.
I love that. Poor Troy.
But it's like, I don't know what people want out of Alien films.
Well, that's the other thing.
When you get to Alien 3, because it's like, all right, cool. So we gave you
We've seen everything the series could have done.
Right. We gave you a horror movie, sort of, and now we've given you an action movie, and you've seen them both, and you liked them both.
And
so now what do we do?
Here is like a religious, like, relic of a film, where just confusing and strange and terrifying and hopeless.
Right. Well, it's like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take the focus away from the monster and make it about the people.
Right.
And that's like what, I don't know if that was too much for audiences or what, but oh boy.
Poor guy.
But it's like,
he was Sean Bean before Sean Bean. He died and everything.
I always used to say that Aliens is on paper the worst action film ever made because if you watch it, the first action sequence falls roughly at the 90-minute mark.
God, it really...
It's about a whole movie before anything action-based happens. You see the aliens very, very briefly. But the first shootout sequence, I'm trying to remember if it's
the thing inside the where they can't use live ammo.
They can't use live ammunition because there's like the gas and everything in there.
Right.
So they're going in and they do anyway, and it's great. It's a great scene. But that falls so far into the movie, and
it shouldn't work, but it does.
I always used to argue that with people where it's like, all right, yeah, but if you read Aliens on paper, you would give up on it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to read 90 to 100 pages of anything expecting action and not getting it. You're going to get frustrated.
And that's so crazy considering that our best-selling author in this country is Stephen King. You know what I mean? Like, exactly the kind of, like... Poor Phil Davis. He had such a beautiful, weird head. Just his, like, I love his head more than, like, just about everybody in this cast because it's almost triangular. You know, he's got this angular little, like, rodent's chin, and that comes up to this gigantic dome. This sequence is pretty rough.
This just almost feels like a different filmmaker made it.
It does.
It doesn't feel.
It's like when what's his name? Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it. He made Not Another Love Story. He shot the first major sequence in Mimic. Guillermo del Toro, I think, was dealing with his father's kidnapping or something like that. And so this fellow who was a producer stepped in and directed this sequence, which feels nothing like the rest of the movie. It's like 2 shots, but it's important. So then here we go. The lead foundry starts based on an accident here. So then Niall Buggy essentially, there he is at the end of the frame. That's the last you're going to see of him because he then just vanishes. She pushes him down the thing, and then I guess he's dead. Who knows?
You never see him again.
You never see him again. She's about to run into a corpse, which I think is supposed to be Willie's corpse, but who knows? And I think this is like such a perfect encapsulation of the whole studio system. You're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I watching this? Who is this? What? Sorry. Like, I had an idea of what was happening, but now I'm lost. Yeah, here's Vincenzo Nicolai's very, very tragic death. He had that perfect kind of boxer's nose, that very flat nose. Who's this now? Exactly. Like, who is that? Is that Pete Postlethwaite? Who knows? It could be Phil Davis. I don't know. The alien also has these weird abilities that it didn't have in the other things. Like it's nesting or something. It's like tacking these bodies to the roof, which is something that you sort of saw them able to do in Aliens, I guess, but it's like doing them almost like a craft project. Like he's an OCD craftsman. Yeah, like right there is a very interesting, like 3 seconds of filmmaking. You know what I mean? That like combination of, you know,
the bottom half of a person.
Yeah. It's sort of Soviet-esque, I guess, in that you're seeing like weird bits of momentum that I guess have to equal a sequence. It feels like experimentation, which is fun, even if it's not exactly coherent.
Well, that's why it feels so strange, is because, you know, even in his first film, David Fincher doesn't really seem to ever half-ass anything.
No, it's true.
So to suddenly have this sequence that feels like the most half-assed
thing,
it's like what
where people are like characters are just vanishing left and right.
Like, was he at the end of his rope, or was he?
Did he care?
At this point, was his second AD just calling the shots for him? Like, you don't even know.
And I like it I feel like on this DVD here, there's footage of those guys shooting this sequence, and I don't remember if he's anywhere near this. Now here comes the all too tragic death of Gregor, where they just die laughing. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that like I haven't seen these films so many times. Kind of wanted better ends for these characters that I love, in spite of the fact that the film doesn't know what to do with them. I feel like you could absolutely remake this as a film that had nothing to do with the Alien franchise. You know what I mean? Tell people you're remaking the Klaus Kinski space movie Creature from 1985.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, and then do this, you know what I mean? Like, and have a better sense of your spatial relation to everybody and have a better sense of who these characters are. You could make a pretty cool movie, especially now with modern film grammar. You know what I mean? Make the Russos do it or somebody.
Right. It just doesn't, I don't know, it
doesn't quite add up.
It doesn't add up at all. And it makes the sequence, and I mean, maybe that's the problem, is that, you know, people are going into this movie and they're dedicating 2.5 hours to it.
Right. Well, in fairness, they only got the 90-minute version. You know what I mean? If you're watching the 2.5 hour version, it's because they've got the DVD, which means they had to care at
enough
least.
To get
yeah,
it,
exactly.
But I guess even so, like, you know, you're dedicating all this time to only have this very messy sequence.
Right.
End it.
And you're right. It is very messy and very. It's so strange and so kind of. I don't know. Yeah. So then again, here's a kind of perfect example of the weird logic of this film, and the fact that not nearly enough attention is paid to story. Like, it's so much more important that this sequence with the creature writhing around happen than anybody understand what is about to happen, which is that Charles Dutton comes to get her and pull her away because he's worried about the alien. The alien, like King Kong, sees Charles Dutton attacking her. She even does the King Kong chest pound thing just then to further compound the reference. The alien thinks that Charles Dutton is attacking her, and it knows that she's pregnant with the queen, and that is why it's following them, and that's why Danny Webb is able to lock them in together, because the alien is following them. But what are the odds that this movie actually spelled that out enough for the casual viewer to put all that together. You know, I kind of love this with the wind blowing and everything. It's almost Casablanca-esque, if I may be so bold. Yeah. So then there you go. He throws him in there, and that's the end of Charles Dutton for all intents and purposes. But like, what a dark kind of, you know, I don't know. It's like manga-esque or something. This kind of idea that everybody has to die for there to be a happy ending.
And then you've got this like, it's like with
Beautiful lighting here.
the doctors running in Amadeus. It's
Right,
just like,
right,
oh,
right.
here come the
The cleanup crew.
Well, especially because you at this point you're really not even sure if they're going to come save the day
Right.
or what they're going to do. So
Yeah,
you're,
you have
you're hoping that they all get to the same place before the aliens murdered everyone, just so that maybe, please God, someone will help.
Exactly, but at this point, which is great, is that you've essentially, like, there's been a race where Ripley believes they're coming to kill her, so everybody in the thing, like all 8 people who just died, essentially were between a rock and a hard place. They had to believe her version of events. You know, it's, yeah, again, so much stuff going on here. None of it quite filled out enough, but, you know, and here's that weird angle lens that they use for the occasional close-up or something.
It's funny because even when they're shooting it, you know, creature vision,
Right.
the camera is still steady. As
It is,
anything.
isn't it?
And it never shakes, it never moves. It's all steady cam,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just flipped over, if anything. I love the tail.
The
in this
tail
movie.
is such a great
the
detail.
tail is he does so much more with it
Mm.
in this one than any of the others.
Yeah, there's always this crazy kind of frenetic quality to the attacks where there's always limbs and tails and stuff moving. Whenever somebody is murdered, there's this motion. Again, like we were saying, there's this kind of secondary motion in every shot, and a lot of it you can't really tell what's going on. And this perfect shot where he's reaching up towards the heavens. And again, this is so perfect, so perfectly in keeping with this film not knowing what it wants to be. The lead doesn't kill it. The water plus the lead kills. It's like the ultimate rewrite. Like, nah, that's not good enough. Kill him again.
Kill it again.
Kill it again. Kill it better, please. Here's the triumphant Elliot Goldenthal music, which always puts me in mind of Dune. This whole sequence here. It's that same kind of, like, very depressing, happy ending. Oh man, Dune. We gotta do one of these for Dune. if I could actually like stand and watch it again. It's another thing where they handed a genius a project that he made his own sense of, and they were like, could you not be you? Like
we wanted you to do this, but we didn't want you to do it like you would do it.
We were kind of hoping that you would just be Tony Scott. Do you think you could do that?
Tony Scott's Dune.
But seriously, why would they like, you know, that's the crazy, crazy logic of Hollywood. You're going to hire somebody whose sensibility you have not bothered to figure out. I love that Ripley's still wearing these crazy, like, bag clothes.
I know,
got her
the
in.
fucking giant
Boots and the
suit.
rags and the sweatpants and, yeah. I love it. She's like a theater tech person. And the work gloves and all, yeah, she should be welding right now. And then here we go. I think he even says one line here, which is kind of the perfect ADR. He's like, yeah, the sprinklers, like, they've been there the whole time. Like, what are you talking about? We never heard of that until right now. Okay, here we go. Here's the film's only computer-generated shot. There it is.
That one.
Not great. That, however, is
Yeah,
beautiful.
because that's all puppet.
The Haunted Eyes of Danny Webb, who was most recently, I believe, in Ironclad 2, Battle for Blood, one of the worst films of the year. Although his voice has not aged, bless him. He still, when he shouts, sounds exactly like he did here. More Chinese lettering on the underside of that little craft that she's climbing onto here. That's a lovely shot with all the conflicting geometric patterns there with the pipeline and the chain in the back. I don't know. I can say it again and again and again. It's one of the most beautiful films.
Well, that's the thing is like it's no matter who you are and how much you want to believe anything we're saying, you cannot argue that this movie isn't gorgeous.
Yeah, and you got the beauty of making it the Lead Foundry is that you kind of get to do the Terminator 2 thing, only better, I would argue, than Terminator 2 did it, with this kind of orange glow lighting up the entirety of the set here. And I think this is actually even a year before Terminator 2 essentially kills their character the same way. I mean, I could be messing up the dates there. In fact, I must be. Terminator 2, I think, came out roughly around the same time. There probably was no chance they influenced each other. But anyway, I think this film, again, is just the lighting. Like, you can see the sweat on her arms there. Yeah, this ending is such a bummer. I'm bummed as hell.
I'm bummed as hell.
You know, she thinks she's got a way out. She thinks she sees a friend who is, in fact, a robot. Ugh, it's just, it's so of its moment. I mean, it's so of that kind of 80s, 90s cyberpunk thing. I think about movies like Future Kill, or Akira for that matter, or the Tetsuo films, just this kind of thing where, like, nothing could end well. Nothing is allowed to go well for people. Lance Henriksen looking weird here. I think this is when he started to get older. For a while he looked the same, from roughly Dog Day Afternoon on through Pumpkinhead, which is a very underrated film. I think more people should watch Pumpkinhead. Directed by the great Stan Winston, who did Creature Design. These like hulking stormtrooper.
Yeah, we need to talk about.
Yeah,
those
that is
guys
so influenced by. That is so anime. This whole bit here. Look at like the way that the movement, the people in their like olive drab moving against the bright red and orange backgrounds here, and there's just I think those are just three like what look like plain old halogen bulbs. Meanwhile, a silver death trooper behind him there, like. Of course it's bad news. Lance Henriksen deserved better than to appear in quite so many straight to sci-fi movies. Those guys, I love his like horrifying mirror sunglasses. There's that. The ending, by the way, here, this sort of self-sacrifice ending, way better in this one than in the theatrical, as if that needed saying. They even changed the sound effect of the pulse rifles here. Fincher was very much making his own movie. And look how gross that little like kiosk is.
Everything is sweaty and disgusting.
It's been around for like decades, clearly. Oh, this poor bastard. Yeah, and takes a stand for once in his life and gets super murdered. That's again the perfectly depressing world of Alien 3.
And maybe that was part of it too, is the fact that, you know, for all intents and purposes, the first two films do end pretty happily.
And hugely, it's worth pointing out. I mean, there's such momentum behind those conclusions. You know what I mean? Like, is there a more satisfying ending than Aliens?
Right.
Where she fights the thing looking like
shoots it into space.
Yeah. Oh my god. Like that. You know, that's the kind of thing that not unreasonably they've made like. No cameras, I love that. He's got the big fucking VHS camera that he's shooting the whole thing with. That's so perfectly Fincher. Still doing that, by the way. Go on, girl. Anyway, but yeah, that's like, you know, that whole ending sequence launched ad campaigns. People were so satisfied by that ending. They were talking about it in Scream 2 a decade later, you know what I mean? And this, nobody talks about this ending because it's such a bummer.
Especially after doing... You know, the only action set piece of the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. Which was such a confusing, weird mess.
And then everything really just kind of slows down.
Yeah, just kind of grinds to a halt.
You're watching this... You're watching her hurl herself...
into a lead foundry. Yeah, and there she goes. Yeah, I remember this sequence lasting forever in the theatrical cut, and I hated it. Because I think she actually gives birth. She starts to birth the thing while she's falling down. It's like the It's like the runway in Fast 6. It's just a never-ending drop. Then they close the foundry, and that is all she wrote. Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I get why people hate this. They're just wrong.
I mean, it's absolutely a film that its parts are greater than its
I
whole.
mean, narratively, it just doesn't add up the way that it needs to.
But it's also incredibly frustrating. That's more than anything else is how frustrating Alien 3 is because it's
Morse
so...
gets the last laugh here, just looking at everything like, what is he even thinking right now?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Got gold teeth.
He's having a good time.
Yeah, he's... yeah.
It's like to have so many great things happen. To have a director whose first film is so well done, and even if it was taken away from him, and the tragedy that it was taken away from him, so we don't even know what it could have been.
Right.
And
well, I mean, we don't even know what it could have been. It's so many times over. Rennie Harlan had just made his first film, which did not suck, miraculously. And they could have given it to him with Eric Red's screenplay. They could have given it to Vincent Ward. They could have given it to David Toohey. This could have been any number of successes, but they gave it to David Fincher and then fucked it up for him.
it just doesn't make sense why they haven't tried to actually utilize the other screenplays that do exist.
They really need to. That
And
needs
just-
to be
and
like
just
a
make
5
them.
obstructions type situation. Where
Right.
They need to take all of those screenplays. They got to take Eric Red's Desert Town screenplay. They got to take David Toohey's Alien Gladiator screenplay, and they got to take Vincent Ward's
Wooden Monastery.
Monastery Planet screenplay.
Right.
They got to make them all because they're all good ideas.
Right,
At
and
least
they,
as far as
they
like,
must be complete somewhere.
somewhere
or
they were
close
because they
enough.
were ready to shoot.
Yeah.
You don't go forward unless they're ready to go.
So
Like.
take those and actually make
Yeah,
some-
Vincent Ward,
some
if you're
cool-
listening, get in touch with us and help you get that movie made because we love you.
it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you know, that you churn out Alien versus Predator and AVPR, and like you're okay, great.
You start the career of two of the worst filmmakers.
Right, like you're taking these screenplays that aren't good, and you fucking know they're not good, and like rather than do that, let's just make these alien movies that never were.
Yeah, I mean, even if like, and the thing too is that I think that there's a certain level where audiences don't want to meet films halfway. They don't want to turn off their suspension of disbelief. They don't want to take this film as separately from the series, and that is why so many people hate it. Whereas, like, for me, it's easy to divorce Alien 3 from Aliens and Aliens from Alien. You know what I mean? They're separate entities to me. You can't compare them because they're from people with such crazily different visions for
Right.
what filmmaking is, let alone what that story should be and how you should tell it. And people just aren't willing to do that. So I feel like some studio head would hear that idea and they go, no, we can't do that. Alien 3 got made and it was terrible. But meanwhile, they're completely different films. You know, like, it would be such a cool idea, and it would be so great to see those things get the due they deserved, and to like explore these other ideas. I mean, ideally, what you'd want to do is give David Fincher a blank check and have him make this movie the way that he was supposed to make it in the first place. But that's not how the world works.
In a perfect world,
In
there
a
would be an
perfect world.
Alien 3 box set. And
With
that
every
box set would have
single-
every version.
You'd have David Fincher doing this better. You'd have Vincent Ward doing his Monk movie. You'd have, Eric Red.
It'd be a series unto itself.
Exactly.
And it would be
the
awesome.
Alien 3 box set. Oh my god, I'd buy that so quick. I would buy that tomorrow.
So would I.
Oh my god.
They'd be perfect.
Oh man. Well, as we wind down the credits here, looking at second unit director Martin Brierly's credit, let's just say thank you so much for spending this time with us. Obviously, history cannot be changed. But we appreciate you coming along on this emotional voyage with us and maybe reconsidering Alien 3. And we hope we, made it entertaining, at least. And maybe you learned something. Who knows?